Razgrad. A world as beautiful as a garden. The hero was sorry to see it destroyed, but it is difficult to find a suitable hero. He thought, why not give some special skills to a random guy this time and just throw him in? He left a job offer at Hello Work. One had already come to him, but he was wearing ordinary clothes and didn't even have a resume. He decided that since he was not far away, he would meet him in person. He thought that was all. If it didn't help, he would think of something else, and if this world was destroyed, he could always create it anew. Young Yamano Masaru, an unemployed 23-year-old guy, sat nervously. He was suddenly invited for an interview. He thought about how he always wanted to show his parents that he was looking for a job, but he didn't know that he would be invited to an interview in regular clothes and without a resume. Yamano held a piece of paper in his hand, on which was written about a sudden summoning. It was a test in a small garden of the world of Razgrad. A person was needed who could stay for a long period of time. The monthly salary was 250,000 yen plus commission. As soon as the other man entered the room, Yamano greeted him and asked the man to take care of him. The man asked Yamano to sit down, and then asked if the guy was the Yamano Masaru they had contacted. He said that he was in charge of hiring. Yamano awkwardly apologized for dressing like that. He asked what kind of testing he was going to be taking. The man asked if Yamano had played RPG games. The boy exclaimed that he loved them. The man replied that it made things easier. He said they wanted Yamano to test out a new skill system they were going to introduce. He handed the boy a sheet and asked him to fill it out. Yamano picked up the contract and the questionnaire and quickly filled them out. The man checked everything and then said that he would like Yamano to begin exploring the world of Razgrad right now. Yamano asked in surprise what it meant, when suddenly the landscape around him changed. The guy found himself on the same chair, but on the street. There was grass under his feet. He sat in a stupor and looked ahead. The guy was a little surprised, after which he laughed and said that he understood. He assumed that this was the virtual reality they were talking about. Suddenly, the man said that it was real. Yamano exclaims that he could hear Ito's voice from somewhere. Surrounded by walls opened up before him, Yamano jumped up, asking if this was real, since he had just been to an interview. Ito said that Yamano is no longer on Earth, and this is another world. The man repeated that this is a test in the world of Razgrad, and this is not a game. He said that Yamano would die if he was killed there. The guy was shocked. Ito said that he wanted Yamano to test his skills here. He said that the only thing Yamano needed to know was that this world would collapse in 20 years. The guy asked if he had the right to refuse. Ito said that there was no such thing because Yamano had already signed the contract. Yamano asked if there could be a return. Ito stated that he could not return now, but if he fulfilled the terms of the contract, the man would return him. He said that now Yamano doesn't need to think about difficulties like saving the world, but just testing his skills and living the way he wants, that's enough. The man said it was simple, but without a weapon, Yamano would have a hard time. He told Yamano to say Manhu in his head. Immediately after that, a small window appeared in front of Yamano. Ito said that in addition to controlling his skills, he can also retrieve items from the menu using spatial magic. And as a parting gift, Ito left Yamano with some basic items and skills. He was sure that the boy would find them useful. First, he should go to Shiori City and register with the guild. He will complete quests and increase his skill levels faster. On the way, he might encounter monsters, just wild rabbits. Wild rabbits only attack those weaker than them, so Yamano was safe. The boy asked Ito who he was. The man said that he was the ruler of this world, and Yamano could consider him something like a god. He said goodbye to Yamano and wished him good luck. The guy was typing something into the menu, saying that since he couldn't go back, he would do it. He quickly changed his clothes using the menu. He was a little worried when he said that since it had come to this, he would live these 20 years no matter what. He walked forward, thinking that he had several skill points available to him, and he could spend them on anything. He scrolled through the menu, thinking that it was so convenient to get things. He took the second level of swordsmanship, and decided that he would learn magic. Yamano couldn't wait to try it out. Suddenly, a wild rabbit jumped out from behind Yamano. The guy turned around to face the monster and swung his sword. The rabbit fell to the ground, dead. Yamano looked at it and realized that it was one of those the god had spoken of. The guy was more interested in his movements. He said with admiration that he had never picked up a sword, but he was able to use it as if he knew everything. He thought that it might be a cheat from the system's skills. He thought that a good life awaits him in this world. Yamano turned around at the sound and saw two rabbits. He was about to attack them, but in an instant they became 100 times larger. The boy thought that there were too many of them. He attacked them and thought about God's words that the road to the city was safe. He remembered that God had said that rabbits attack those who are weaker than them. While they were attacking him, he realized that he was weaker than a rabbit. There were more and more of them. He didn't mind, but he didn't understand why his body had become so heavy. He thought that the skill system should help him use the sword. The description of the swordsmanship skill said that it allowed him to be on par with a trained soldier. However, the guy was a hermit, and he knew how to use a sword, but he lacked stamina. His body couldn't keep up. He tried to use magic, which created a bright flash of light. Light is a magic for illumination, but depending on the application, it can be blinding. He decided to use fire magic. He had to finish them off quickly because his body wouldn't last long. He didn't understand why this magic took so long. He wanted to do it faster before the rabbits noticed him. When they were already running towards him, the guy used a small explosion. The guards noticed the smoke. When they arrived, they saw Yamano unconscious and decided to take him to the church. When a guy thought he had found a job, he was attacked by wild rabbits in another world. He thought he was talking nonsense, but he himself didn't know what was going on. When Yamano opened his eyes, he saw a completely unfamiliar ceiling. The guy always wanted to say this phrase. He lay and looked up. He stood up, wondering where he was. At that moment, a girl entered the room and said that she was glad to see that Yamano had woken up. She said her name was Angela and she was a priestess. She said that Yamano had passed out after using up his mana and stamina. Angela said that he needed to be careful with his mana. Yamano said he would be careful. He thought she was beautiful. The guy asked where he was, to which Angela replied that he was in the city of Shiori, in the church infirmary. Angela explained that the church's job is to honor the gods and heal the townspeople. Yamano said he understood. He guessed that he had reached Shiori City, and for some reason he could talk to her. Yamano thought that it might be because of the skill, standard language of the world of Razgrad. Angela asked who he was and if he was an adventurer. Yamano Masaru introduced himself and said that he wanted to become an adventurer. Angela said that she had never heard such names before. The girl turned to Masaru and told him that she had been told earlier that he had lost consciousness outside the city. Yamano was a little surprised that she had spoken to him without suffixes. The girl asked if that meant he was being attacked. Yamano immediately remembered the rabbits. The guy looked away and said it was a ferocious monster. He thought he wasn't lying, because they were real monsters. Angela said she thought the area around town was safe. She said that the guild needed to be notified about this, and Yamano would go there and register as an adventurer. The guy wanted to thank Angela, when suddenly an idea came to him. He thanked her and called her Sweet Anne. The girl blushed and asked him not to call her that. Yamano thought she responded cutely. She seemed like a carefree person, and he thought she wouldn't pay attention to it. Angela said that Masaru is younger than her, and he should show respect to his elders. The guy said that he is 23. Angela was surprised and said that she was 20 and he was older. He thought that Oriental people looked younger. The guy apologized and said that it was a joke. Yamano thanked the girl for taking care of him. Angela said that if something happened, he could always rely on the church. She said that even though they serve the gods, faith alone cannot fill one's stomach. Angela said that she would be glad if he were more grateful. The shocked guy gave the girl some money and left. Angela waved after him. In the end, Yamano had to pay, and now he knows that a blessing can be bought. After that, the guy went to the Adventurers Guild. There were a lot of scary people there. He was afraid of others, so he avoided eye contact with everyone. The boy followed the man who said that in order to become an adventurer, Yamano needed to pass an interview. He entered the room where an old man and a young girl were waiting for him. The man greeted Yamano and asked the boy to sit in front of him. Yamano Masaru introduced himself, after which the vice guildmaster Drevin did the same. He also introduced the girl Tilika, a third-rank servant of truth. Her magic eye can see through any lie, so Drevin wanted Yamano to answer his questions truthfully. Yamano wondered if it was true, because the girl looked like a schoolgirl but seemed to be an important person. Tilik blushed and turned away. Drevin said that Tilika was very shy, so Yamano shouldn't look at her too much. The guy thought that he would rather look at a cute girl than at a muscular man. Drevin began with simple questions about whether Yamano had a criminal record, whether he was spying for anyone, whether there were people who wanted him dead, or those for whom he wished such a thing. Yamano thought that he had just arrived in this world and could not have a criminal record. He said that the answer to all questions was no. Talika looked at him. Yamano wasn't sure if her eye had worked. Drevin noted that the guy had told the truth. He continued and asked why Yamano wanted to be an adventurer. Yamano said that it was to earn a living and to improve himself. However, he knew that it was to test his skills. At this time, Talika was looking at him intently. The old man said that there were safer ways. Yamano said that becoming an adventurer was the fastest way, so he chose it. Drevin said that this was not for reckless people. He asked what Yamano would do when he earned money. The guy said he had bought a horse. He also had to say he would start a love group. Drevin laughed and said he was a man after all. Yamano asked if polygamy was permitted here. The old man confirmed this and said that he himself had 2 wives. As a knight or adventurer, men risk their lives in battles and then do not live long. And the women stay to live, which makes them the majority, so polygamy is allowed. Even Yamano can have several wives as long as he is a reliable guy. Yamano thought that a love group was necessary in this world and he wanted to get one if he had a girlfriend. Drevin said they were almost finished. He asked if Yamano vowed to follow the guild rules as much as possible. Yamano confirmed and asked what "if possible" meant. The old man said it was because when he asked to swear to follow the rules no matter what, the magic eye would immediately work. Drevin said that they were finished and Yamano would receive his guild card at the reception. The fee was 100 gold. Yamano thanked him. The old man said that he wanted to ask about something else. The old man said he heard that the guards found Yamano unconscious outside the city and carried him to the church. He asked who did this to him. The boy asked if he was obliged to answer. The old man said yes, because if the threat is so strong that it can harm the swordsman, then they are obliged to eliminate it. The boy caught Talika's gaze. He whispered in the old man's ear, but he didn't hear. After that, Yamano awkwardly said that he was attacked by a pack of wild rabbits. Talika said that it was true. Drevin laughed because Yamano was almost killed by wild rabbits. Even the guards heard his laughter. At this time, Yamano covered his face, thinking that he wanted to die of shame. The old man apologized for laughing. He said that tomorrow they had a beginner's course, and Yamano would go to it too. He said that it was a must. After some time, Yamano came to the tavern where he was given a room. He immediately fell onto the bed. Suddenly, Yamano received a task from God: write a report. The guy tried to write about everything. He remembered how they looked at him when they found out that he was almost killed by rabbits. He screamed that he couldn't go there after embarrassing himself like that. Yamano decided that tomorrow he would pretend that he had forgotten to come. As long as he had the skills, he would be fine. The next morning, the door to his room was knocked down. Drevin picked up the boy and carried him in his arms. He was lucky that he immediately found out where Yamano was staying because he couldn't let the guy miss the course. Once he completed it, he would become a new himself. Drevin brought Yamano to the training ground and threw him on the floor. He apologized for his lateness. The old man asked the instructor to be stricter with Yamano. Another guy helped Yamano up, when suddenly, the instructor shouted for everyone to line up. He said that he was in charge of their training. His name was Sergeant Vogt, a former A-rank adventurer. Many were shocked. Yamano asked the boy what was so surprising. The boy exclaimed that A-rank was the best of the best. He didn't understand how Yamano could not know that. Vogt said that before they started, they needed to put on the things in his hands. This equipment would help them get through the training. The priest fastened the objects on the students' necks. Suddenly, the collar snapped loudly. Vogt cried out rudely that they should listen to him now. He said that the objects on their necks were collars of submission. Their use was only permitted on this training ground. They would not be able to remove them until the week of training was over, and they would not be able to escape. The students noticed that they couldn't remove the object. Vogt shouted that they could only speak when spoken to. They also had to add "sir" before and after they said something. He asked if everything was clear. The students exclaimed that they understood. Yamano noticed that his body was moving on its own. He assumed that this was the effect of the collar. Vogt shouted for everyone to shut up, grab sandbags, and run 20 laps around the track. As Yamano ran, Vogt screamed at him to run as if his life depended on it. He called the boy a wild rabbit. On the second day, he raised Yamano from his fainting spell and asked who had given him permission to faint. He ordered him to return to duty immediately after being treated. On the third day, they hit the straw dolls with spears while Vogt shouted at them. On the fourth day, they held the bar. Vogt said that they could hate him, but that was the only way they would learn. He was strict, but fair. He had no racial discrimination. Men, women, humans, elves, beastmen, dwarves, they are all equally worthless. He shouted that his task was to make first-class adventurers out of these lower life forms. On the 7th day, he again ordered everyone to line up. By this day, Yamano was more stern. The priests asked the disciples to look at the light around their fingers. With this, they removed their shackles. Immediately after this, Vaughn hugged them and said that the training was over. He stated that they had tried very hard and had overcome this difficult test. He said that they were now adventurers. Many cried with joy. Vogan turned to Yamano and said that there was something else he had to do. He pointed to the wall and said that Drevin was waiting for him. The old man asked if Yamano was angry that he had dragged him there. The guy said that it was not so, because thanks to Drevin he was brought into shape. He thanked the old man. Drevin said it was worth playing the bad guy to hear that. He said he did not want to resort to that, so it was good that Yamano understood. Tillich said he was guilty. He asked if the old man had brought the girl with him knowing that he would lie. The old man said that anyway, the guild had just received a request that would interest Yamano. It was the elimination of 5 wild rabbits. The goal was to collect the meat of the 5 rabbits and deliver it to the guild. He asked if Yamano would do it. The guy grabbed the task and quickly came to the guild. He said that he would take it on. The people in the guild laughed at him, saying that he should not die because of the rabbits this time. Yamano walked past the taunts in silence. Drevin asked Vogt what he thought. The man said they would find out soon. Yamano thought that he had skill points available, but he didn't want to spend them. He leveled up and gained several skills through beginner training. As the rabbits gathered around him, Yamano thought that he wouldn't rely on such things for revenge. He quickly and deftly cut the rabbits, thinking that he could. He deftly found opponents and threw daggers at them. The rabbits quickly gathered around him, but Yamano killed them just as quickly. By the end of the battle, there were piles of bodies around him. He turned around and saw the rollers running away. He received the item rabbit meat. Very soon he returned to the guild. Those who had laughed at Masaru as he left asked if he had hunted. Since he was a newcomer, one of the men suggested that he had killed 2 or 3 rabbits. Suddenly Yamano said that he had collected 57 rabbits. The man fell silent. He stood next to him and said that Yamano had just left the guild and he couldn't have caught so many in such a short time. The man said that the guild card automatically records how many monsters he killed, so he didn't have to pretend. Yamano silently pressed the button on the menu, after which the rabbits began to fall in heaps. The guy said that it was written so on the guild card. He asked if the man really wanted to count this mountain of rabbits. Everyone was amazed. Suddenly Drevin began to clap proudly. Following him, others did the same. They praised the guy, saying that he turned out to be completely different. No one who was there laughed at Masaru anymore. The adventurers praised his feat. And in honor of this, they nicknamed him Rabbit Hunter. They no longer called him Little Rabbit, but Mr. Rabbit. Yamano asked if they could call him by his name. Yamano received new leather equipment. At the Adventurers Guild, one of the men wished the boy a good rabbit hunt today. The man said that if Yamano ever wanted to join the group, he should tell him and he would make a man out of the boy. Yamano agreed and thought that they had started talking to him normally lately, but since most adventurers looked scary, he couldn't get used to it. He clicked on the menu, thinking that he had learned something new and useful in the beginner's training. This meant that he could gain skills without spending points. He wanted to save the points just in case. Skill Reset allows you to forget skills and give back the points spent during the month. He walked on, thinking that he wanted to learn more skills from others. He approached a man who was standing nearby and asked if he could learn anything. After some time, Yamano came to church, where he met Angela, who called him a rabbit. He asked not to call him that and asked how the church knew this nickname. The girl said that the whole town was talking about it. Rabbit Hunter Masaru Yamano. He said that he didn't want anyone to know about it. Angela asked what brought Yamano to the church. The boy said that he wanted to learn healing magic, but when he asked about it at the guild, he was told that he could learn at the church by making a donation. Angela said that she would teach him, and since he had made a donation last time, the lesson would be free. She called him to follow her and said that he was amazing. The guy asked why. Angela said that it was because of the rabbits. She didn't know if he knew about it, but rabbits are a very harmful species. These pests cause damage to crops, but the reward for them is low, so high-ranking adventurers do not take on this task. Low-ranking ones have a hard time dealing with them. The rabbits are too nimble, and traps are not effective against them. She said that Yamano had conquered a whole mountain in a day, and that was great. The harvest was saved, and their skins and meat became food and clothing. She praised Yamano for helping others. The guy blushed. He didn't understand how she could say such things so openly. He said that Angela was exaggerating a little. The girl said that it was true. She said that they could practice in this room. Learning healing magic takes 2 or 3 days of hard training, or 2 weeks of easy training. She asked him which he would choose. Yamano said he wanted to test his potential with heavyweights. Angela said he said something cool. The guy thought that instead of wasting 2 weeks, he would learn the skill quickly and save points. Angela asked Masaru for her hand. He held it out with the backside, and Angela told him to turn it over. The guy thought that Angela's hand was soft. The girl put her hand down and asked Yamano not to move. She said she might miss. Immediately after that, she plunged the dagger into his hand. Yamano pulled his hand back and screamed as blood poured out. The girl said that there was no need to scream about it. Yamano exclaimed that she shouldn't talk nonsense. Angela said that she would heal him and he should carefully watch the flow of mana. The guy looked with admiration at how streams of magic developed around Angela. After that, she wiped the guy's hand. Yamano looked and noticed that she had healed. Angela said that the wound was large, so most likely Yamano saw the flow of mana. The guy confirmed this and said that he felt it more than he saw it. The girl told him to try to create the same flow of mana himself. The girl grabbed Yamano's hand and the dagger, then said that she needed to do it again. The guy screamed and asked her to stop. He noted that she was terribly strong. Angela told them not to worry, because now it would only be the tip. Yamano was frightened by Angela's murderous look. She gently pricked his finger and said that she would check the hospital and that he should continue practicing. The guy tried to gather mana and do the same as Angela, but the mana he gathered dissipated. He realized that it was more difficult than he imagined. It would cost him a lot of mana points. The guy thought that it was very good that he had received a ring from God in the morning. Ito wrote to the boy that since the funny situation with the wild rabbits had been resolved, he would give him a bonus. Yamano wondered if such things should come so easily. It was a ring of magic. Yamano thought that the expenditure of mana caused weakness throughout his body. Suddenly, he heard sounds behind him. He turned around and saw children. When the boys noticed that Yamano saw them, they hid. The guy smiled. After a while, Angela came with tea. She apologized and said that the hospital business had kept her longer than she thought. She heard Masaru telling the children about how he had thrown back a giant wild rabbit that had attacked his sword and thrown knives at it. But before finishing him off, Yamano managed to kill 10 or 11 other enemies and then struck him down. He thought that children were so innocent. Even the story about the wild rabbit made them respect him. Seeing how Yamano was getting along with the children, Angela smiled warmly. She coughed, which caught Yamano's attention. She apologized for distracting him when he was having so much fun. The boy turned pale. Angela told the children that she and Yamano had something to talk about, so they should finish for today. The children agreed and ran away. At this time, the guy was bashfully covering his face with his hands. Angela called Yamano a rabbit hunter and said that the story was wonderful. The guy asked her to stop. The girl asked if he was able to use healing magic. Yamano said that he could probably repeat the flow of mana, but there was one thing. The girl used magic on his hand and told him to try again. Angela smiled and said if he was doing it right. She said that the wound was a river of possibilities. He needed to imagine a healthy body and only mana would flow through it. The magic swirled around Yamano and the small cut on his hand healed. They both happily noticed that he had succeeded. Angela exclaimed that the guy was a genius. Yamano said that she was flattering him. She meant that it took her half a year to master the art of healing. And since Yamano managed to do it in a day, he is a genius. The guy thanked Angela. He opened the menu and saw that he had learned it, but he was happy not because of this. He looked at Angela and thought that it was good that he had someone with whom he could share his joy. The girl noticed his gaze and asked if he could have any mana left. The already frightened guy sighed with relief. He remembered how much mana he had when he looked at the menu. He told Angela that he had enough mana to continue training. The girl said that in that case, she would ask him to help in the hospital as a practitioner of healing magic. She just wanted to make him work for free. She began to beg him, because they cannot cope with all the patients, with the number of healers that they have. The guy thought about it because he could be with Angela. He said that he agreed because of her requests. Angela thanked him. She told him to come to church tomorrow morning. The boy looked at the statue and thought that it looked like the god Ito. He remembered that the man said that he was like a god, but Yamano thought that he was actually a god. He heard children running somewhere and shouting that they would tell everyone. The guy saw a crowd of people at the entrance to the church. Angela greeted Yamano and said that today he would heal all these people. The guy asked Angela if he wanted him to cure them all. The girl said that they were his visual aid. The guy asked if it was necessary to say that. Angela said that they usually receive people at the hospital, but since there were a lot of people, the reception would be at the church. And since Yamano agreed to use his power for free for the sake of practice, yesterday she asked the children to tell the townspeople about it. She didn't expect all these people to come. Yamano asked why she did it. Angela said that it would be a good experience for Yamano. The guy said he didn't want to appear in front of the crowd. He apologized and said he would go back to the tavern when suddenly he felt that Angela was too close. She was soft, and because of this he lost time to escape. The girl brought clothes that their priest usually wears. She also took everything that Yamano asked for. The girl asked him why he needed a mask and a cloak. Yamano said that it would prevent people from remembering his face because he didn't want to stand out. Angela thought that his clothes only made him stand out more. Yamano regretted that he couldn't leave because of Angela's body, which was to be expected. He thought that he couldn't pass by all these people, and besides, he had already promised to help. He didn't want to hold back, so he spent all his points on improving healing. He called the first visitor. An elderly woman came in and said she had been having problems with her eyesight lately. Yamano asked if it was presbyopia. The woman was perplexed. Yamano said that this happens with age and it is not a disease. The woman still hoped that Yamano's treatment would improve her condition at least a little. The guy looked at Angela, who was blinking at him in Morse code so that he could heal the woman. Yamano put his hand to the woman's forehead and began to cast a spell. The woman exclaimed that she could see better. The guy thought it was a placebo effect. Angela called the next client. A man came in and said his shoulders had been hurting since he turned 40. Yamano said that was how it was supposed to be after 40. The next person said that his hair has been falling out lately. Yamano said that it was hereditary. Next was a girl who said that her skin had become dry because she didn't sleep enough. Yamano said that she shouldn't neglect her health and not rely on magic. He yelled at Angela that it was supposed to help him with his training, but he didn't want to waste mana on that. Angela explained that they said it was free and many people came because of that. The girl called the next one. Yamano thought that if he could give them a little peace, then everything would be fine. The next person to come in was a man with a child who was coughing heavily. Yamano started using magic. He thought he could cure her, but it wouldn't solve the problem. He saw that the girl was malnourished. Anyone could tell that she was lacking nutrients. The girl told her father that she was feeling better. Yamano thought he should scold his parents for letting things get to this point, but there were other factors. The father thanked the doctors for saving the girl. Yamano saw that the father was as thin as the girl. The boy opened the menu and handed them a rabbit. He told the man to keep it a secret and share it with his daughter. They needed to eat well. The father and daughter were shocked. They took the rabbit and thanked Yamano. They were led to the back door. Yamano asked if there were many more people like him. Angela said there were more of them than Yamano could imagine. They can't provide free treatment often, so they probably came hoping that the rumor about free treatment was true. They healed people for a reasonable fee, but they also needed to support orphans, so they also took in those they normally couldn't afford to take in. And even if they treated them, the problem was still something else. Yamano understood this. He sat down and told Angela to let the seriously ill stay and the rest go. Angela agreed. The guy tried to treat everyone who came to him, but one of his clients left him speechless. In the arms of the thin man lay a child who was breathing heavily. Yamano continued to treat him, but it did not help. The child was in a terrible state. Angela took the guy by the shoulder and then he understood everything. He apologized to the man and said there was nothing more he could do. The man looked at the child and said they had tried and that was enough. He cried heavily and hugged his son. He realized that magic would not help. Yamano turned pale. In the novels that the boy spent a lot of time reading when he was unemployed, the main character received a superpower from God. The ability was unmatched in the other world. That's what he meant when he said that. He had tricks too, he shouldn't have had any equal. And yet, he couldn't save those right in front of him. Angela had said that too. He cried when he thought about how poverty couldn't be cured by magic. When he finished the work, he collapsed from fatigue and said that it was harder than he thought. Angela said that he had done a good job. She was impressed that the boy had healed so many people in one day. When the girl brought him a mug, Yamano asked in horror what this viscous liquid was. Angela said that this is a thick tea for magicians. It will help him restore mana and relieve fatigue. The guy was not very inclined to it. Angela said that she had sent the remaining patients home. She added that he did not need to worry because she had told them in advance that when the healers ran out of mana, the reception would end. He agreed. The girl said that he had helped a lot today and thanked him. Yamano also thanked her and said that thanks to her he had become more confident in using healing magic. He turned away and said goodbye. The girl told him that he shouldn't worry about it, he had helped many people today. Angela doesn't have as much mana as Masaru, so it's impossible for her to heal that many people. They were able to help everyone only because the guy was there. She said that she would like him to help tomorrow too, if he doesn't mind. The guy thought that his mana and healing magic were obtained through cunning and useful equipment, and not through his own efforts. However, if he could use them to save others, he would agree. He exclaimed to Angela that they should calm down and try harder next time. He said that his mana was not unlimited, and the problem of poverty could not be solved with magic, so they should try as best they could without overexerting themselves. Angela agreed. The girl said it was a relief because it was supposed to be a training session and he looked like he was fixated on it, and Angela was worried. The guy said that, faced with the harsh reality, he became a little depressed. However, Angela encouraged him. He wanted to say something else, but simply said goodbye to the girl. Angela was glad that she could help. At that time, adventurers were walking through the forest and noticed the monsters. They said that trouble should be expected from the monsters, because they were clearly up to something. One of the men said that in his hometown, such marching monsters are called the Night Parade of 1,000 Demons. Another said that it was a suitable description. They were going to report the monsters to the guild. Yamano came to the Adventurers Guild. He came in thinking that he had a big catch today. He saved up some money by hunting wild rabbits. He thought it was time to move on to the next stage. At the entrance to the guild, he noticed a large crowd of people. Vote said that Yamano came just when they remembered him. Dreven said that the guy came on time and called to them. Yamano thought that he had a bad feeling. The guy turned away and said that he remembered that it was time for him to go home. Dreven grabbed him and said that he was lying like he was breathing. He told Yamano not to be cowardly because they had a good offer for him. Later, the guy came to the church. There, Yamano was met by joyful orphans. The boy exclaimed that the adventurer Yamano had arrived, after which he asked where Angela was. One of the orphans said that she would take her brother, the rabbit. Yamano thought about how cruel children could be. The orphans asked if the boy had hunted wild rabbits. They were curious how many he had caught. The boy told the children to listen and be amazed, to look and admire, because this time the adventurer Masaru had caught a big catch. He opened the menu and pulled out a huge boar. Yamano asked how the kids could handle it, since he could hunt more than just rabbits. The children saw the boar, they burst into tears, which the boy did not expect. At that moment, Angela came into the room and asked what was going on and why the children were crying. The girl noticed Masaru, who was already there. The guy apologized to the priestess. She smiled when she realized why they were crying. Angela told the older ones to take the dirty children with them to take a bath. She told the younger ones to stop crying, because nothing bad had happened. She told some to go wash themselves and the others to do the laundry. Yamano admired it and thought that she had already gotten used to it. He thought that Angela was like a kindergarten teacher. Angela noticed his gaze and said that he smelled of something. The guy exclaimed that this could not be, because he uses purification magic on himself every day. The girl said in shock that purification magic can only clean off dirt from surfaces. For example, dust or blood from a sword. The boy was surprised too. Angela said that the dirt had to be washed off. She allowed him to use the soap once. She told the children to drag Masaru into the bath. The children quickly grabbed the boy and led him away. Angela waved to the boy and said that he had washed himself well. In the bathroom, the guy was sniffing himself and thought that he had smelled soap for a long time. Angela said that he could only use the soap once. He wondered if it was really that expensive. He thought that Angela seemed to have gone to take a bath too. Yamano thought that if this were an anime or manga, there would be a scene where she was taking a bath. An image of Angela in the bath appeared in his head. The guy thought that it didn't matter because he wouldn't see it. While he was thinking about this, Angela came out of the other room and said that she enjoyed her swim. The guy screamed in surprise. She sat down next to him and asked why he had shouted. Yamano said that nothing had happened. He thought that he could not say that he had thought all sorts of things about her. Masaru knew that Angela was a beauty, but after the bath she seemed even more beautiful to him. The girl noticed him. Yamano apologized and said that he didn't know that the children would be scared. Angela told him not to worry about it. One day they would all see animals and monsters. She said that it was better for them to realize how dangerous the world was as soon as possible. Yamano understood her. The girl said that if he wanted to make amends with her, then some tasty boar meat would come in handy. Yamano said that he would bring it next time. Angela asked if he had come to help at the hospital today. She asked if he could start as soon as he finished his tea. At that time she was pouring tea. Masaru said that he came for that too. The guy said that the main reason he came by today was to let people know that he would be gone for a while. Angela asked if something had happened. Yamano said that he would leave the city for a few days. They set off to explore the northern forest. His spatial magic for storing things is very useful, which seems to be why he was invited to carry the research team's luggage. The guy said that it was hard to be needed. He added that he was needed only as a baggage handler. At this time, Angela tried not to laugh. Yamano said that she didn't need to hold back. She asked if something had happened in the northern forest. She handed the guy hot tea. Masaru thanked her and said that it looked like there was a large crowd of monsters coming through this forest. Angela asked if it was dangerous. Yamano said that Sergeant Vogt, who was in charge of his training, and other high-ranking adventurers would also be joining. He said that all he could do was stay behind them, and he would be paid even if he didn't take part in the battle. Angela asked if there was a chance that at least one monster would attack him. Yamano said that he owned a sword and small explosion magic, so everything would be fine with him. The guy noticed Angela's expression and asked why she was angry. The girl exclaimed that she was not angry. She asked Masaru not to act rashly and to return safe and sound. The guy said he understood. He wondered if he really looked that unreliable. After a while, the guy left the church. Angela told him to take care of himself. After that, the guy went to the Adventurers Guild. He brought a boar there. He was asked if he wanted to sell the whole carcass. Yamano confirmed this and asked to leave him some tasty meat. The man said that he understood, and after a while he gave Yamano a box of meat. The guy thought that he would give the meat to Angela when he returned from the northern forest. If he left it on the menu, it would not spoil. Now, Yamano decided to invest his money in useful things. He went to a gun shop where he collected a full set of equipment. The proud rabbit hunter thought he now had a magnificent outfit. He took for himself a suit of troll skin armor and a sword of black steel. The guy went forward, happily saying that with this equipment, exploring the forest would definitely be a success. When Yamano arrived at the site, one of the guys told him that there were 5 barrels of water, 10 boxes of water. He also told Yamano to check if there were enough tents for all the teams. The boy agreed. He thought about the new equipment he had acquired, but he was alone again. He didn't know anyone who was going on the hike. He remembered that it was the same during training. The only person Masaru knew was Sergeant Vogt, and meeting new people from scratch was too difficult for him. Suddenly, one of the guys happily turned to Masaru. It was Kruk, whom they had met during training. He said that he hadn't seen Yamano since the beginner's training. He asked if the guy was taking part in the study. Silver also joined the conversation and said that he was also from the training for beginners. He suggested that the boy go together. Suddenly, Yamano hugged them and cried. Yamano said that he was saved. The amazed boys asked if he was really so happy to see them. After a while, Vogt asked everyone to introduce themselves. He said that he was the head of the research group, Sergeant Vogt. One of the men said his name was Lazard Strongsword. He also introduced Liz, Morale, Kruk, and Silver. They were all from the village of Alibur, which is why the team was named that. Vogt told Masaru that the guy was going with Alibur and they should get acquainted. The guy introduced himself, while being very nervous. Suddenly, he exclaimed loudly that he was a rabbit hunter. He thought that his attempt at humor had worked. Everyone laughed, while one of the people looked sternly at the guy. Vogt suggested continuing the acquaintance. Then the Helvon team, archers, introduced themselves. There was a team called Twilight Wings that was responsible for reconnaissance. Masaru thought that the name suggested that they were upstarts. The main force of this operation was the Battle Axe of Dawn. This group included Orba, Levin, Tax, and Nania. Orba also introduced Elizabeth, a wind mage. Suddenly, this girl ran up to Masaru and exclaimed that she refused to accept that he was as excellent a mage as she was. They will walk for 5 days. Even those who are not usually inclined to lag behind must be careful, everyone agreed. Lazard told Masaru to stay close to them. At this time, the guy felt awkward because Elizabeth was staring at him. The girl turned away and left. Yamano thought that he had done something wrong. Elizabeth continued to look at him. Kruk suggested that there was something she did not like about Yamano. The boy asked what it could be, to which Kruk stated that it could be the face. Yamano exclaimed, as if she could have such an unreasonable reason. He didn't believe that he was so ugly. Suddenly, Lazard gestured with his hand for them to be silent. He said that there was a group of monsters ahead. Their mission was to explore the forest. One of the adventurers asked if this meant they should avoid unnecessary battles. Orba said that if they left them like this, they might be attacked from behind later. He thought they should be destroyed. Lazard said they would do it because they were just orcs and goblins. Even if there were 50 or 100 of them, it would not change anything. Vogt suggested taking the monsters in a pincer attack. First they would attack them with magic, and then suddenly the archers would attack from behind. The rest will enter the battle according to the circumstances. Everyone agreed. They told Masaru and Elizabeth that the first strike was theirs. Elizabeth went forward and screamed so that Yamano could not interfere with her. The guy agreed and thought that she hated him. Everyone stood in their positions. Elizabeth began to use a spell. She said that by the spiritual contract between the ancestors and the ancient spirits, with this finger and wisdom she commands the void of heaven to attack. The guy thought it was unusual. Elizabeth summoned a storm, and Yamano used a small explosion. The monsters flew apart. One of the goblins tried to call for help, but was attacked. The archer said that he would not allow them to call for reinforcements. Orba shouted that they were badly damaged. Following these words, the Wings of Twilight ran into battle. Lazard told Morel that he was leaving the care of those two to him. Lazard himself went into battle. Yamano did not want to interfere, so he decided to help with magic. It was a fire arrow. He shot an arrow and hit the monsters. Elizabeth saw it and said that Yamano was really talented. He asked if she was serious. The girl blushed and exclaimed that he should not weaken his defense until they had defeated all the enemies. At this time, one of the monsters crept behind Elizabeth. He tried to attack her, but Yamano got there first and defeated the monster. He asked if she was okay. The girl held a dagger in her hand. Masaru apologized and asked if he had said too much. The girl stated that she was going to kill the goblin with her wind-shrouded knife. But she thanked him. She said it only because he saved her. Yamano smiled. Vogt ordered Masaru to collect the corpses. He said that later they would check the guild cards to see who killed whom, then they would sell them upon returning to town and split the proceeds. Vogt told the Twilight Wings to go find a place to set up camp, and the others should decide among themselves to guard the perimeter. Yamano asked Lazard why they couldn't set up camp here. He said that the smell of corpses would attract monsters. In the evening, the camp was already set up. Yamano was counting things: 1 barrel of water, 2 boxes of food, a set of tools for the care of weapons for Alibur, and there were other things for the battle axe of Dawn. Suddenly he caught Elizabeth's angry gaze. He came up and asked what was wrong. The girl asked how he learned spatial magic. He was afraid that she thought he was suspicious. Elizabeth said that despite all the baggage he had carried so far, he had taken the corpses for safekeeping, and it seemed he might take more. Elizabeth also has spatial magic, but it is not as capacious and it quickly overflows. She asked if there was a trick to improve it. The guy apologized and said that he didn't know any tricks because he had never practiced it. Elizabeth knew that it depended a lot on talent, but there was hope. Yamano asked why she didn't like him. The girl exclaimed that he was a proud magician who carried luggage and made jokes about his shameful name. She said that he should be ashamed. Masaru said that it was his nickname. He asked if wizards were really that special. Elizabeth confirmed it and said that magic cannot be developed without talent. There are even people who cannot use magic at all. Talented wizards are in high demand among adventurers. In addition, this kingdom is located near the lair of monsters, the land of demons. Skirmishes between them and demons are quite frequent, so offensive magic and, of course, restorative magic are very valuable. Elizabeth said that a skilled healer would definitely be sent to the front lines. Yamano understood why Angela told him that they were short of healers. Yamano said that he heard her cast a spell during the battle. He asked what it was. Elizabeth said that it was the main way to use magic, although few people use it. He asked what was going on at that time. The girl asked if it looked impressive. The guy said it did. She said she was proud of her strength. It was great to have things that only she could do, but with that came responsibility. She said that Masaru should be proud of it too. He thought that his strength was just a trick. He wondered what only he could do. The guy thanked Elizabeth and said that from now on he would try to gain more self-confidence. Vogt said that they had to get up early in the morning, so everyone should return to their tents right after eating. The next day, everyone had already gathered. Crook told Yamano that before the Wings of Twilight returned from reconnaissance, he wanted to ask the guy about something. He asked if Masaru liked someone. Yamano asked what was wrong, because Crook asked about it tensely. The guy said he just wanted to hear his friend's opinion. In the village of Alibur, there is an old man who left the adventurers long ago and returned to the village with a young wife. They had a child and were happy, but later he found out that his wife was a slave. Silver and Masaru were surprised. Crook was also surprised then, but then he thought that this was a good way. He wanted to buy a slave because adventurers do not always manage to meet a girl. On the other hand, it was strange, because it was buying a life. So he wanted to hear his friend's opinions. Yamano thought that this was not a common occurrence in Japan. Silver said that it was wonderful. He had recently seen a waitress that Croc liked flirting with the chef, so he needed a more reliable way. Yamano didn't understand why Silver said that. He said that no matter how Crook did it, as long as they were happy together, Yamano would support them. Crook thanked his friends. Silver said that Liz, who he liked, was in love with Razgrad. Yamano asked if they were friends. Vote told them to stop talking, because they were on a mission. One of the adventurers said that things were bad. They had found traces of a dragon. Everyone tensed up. These creatures are at the top of the food chain. They thought that the dragon was going to nest in the forest. Frightened by the dragon, the other monsters run away from the territory in search of a new home. Yamano was scared. Since he was in a fantasy world, it was not surprising that they existed, but he could not believe it. This was the answer to the question of why the monsters were leaving in droves, but they didn't know what to do now. They didn't want to say it, but after yesterday's battle, the number of monsters and beasts had decreased. And far from there is a place where the dragon can get food, the city of Shiori. People were shocked. Razgrad said it would take the dragon half a day to reach the city, and things could get worse. They had to defeat it there. The plan of action was in charge of Battle Axe of Dawn, since they have experience in fighting the dragon. The man asked Masaru what about him. The guy didn't understand him. Vote said that initially, Masaru was only carrying luggage, so he didn't need to risk his life, and his participation was not necessary. Razgrad said that it was better to take on this, because they had experienced people. He would participate and receive a large reward, increase the rank of adventurer and return to the city as a winner. Crook said he would do it. It would be his first step toward buying a slave, and he would cut a little. Silver said that if an adventurer strives to be the best of the best, then sooner or later he will come to the dragon. What to do if you don't take risks and don't grab every opportunity? Vote asked what Yamano would do. The guy didn't want to risk his life. Right now, he was better than anyone at hunting wild rabbits and wild boars. He could continue to act as usual, earn money, and test his skills. So he had no reason to put his life on the line in a fight against a dragon that had appeared out of nowhere. Suddenly, he remembered Angela. He said he would do it, but they shouldn't expect much from him. Vote told the Twilight Wings that if they lost the fight, they needed to report it to Shiori City. They agreed. Vote said that they would first lure the dragon outside, since they wouldn't be able to hit it properly inside the nest. One of the adventurers asked why they couldn't use Masaru's explosive magic to bury it alive. Orba said that this would not be enough to win. The dragon could escape and go build a nest somewhere else, and they could not be sure that it would not be near Shiori. Razgrad said they had to defeat him when he came out to eat them. Vote said they would take his wings with Masaru and Elizabeth's magic. Afterwards, they will cut off all escape routes. Orba said that they will do the rest. They were counting on the wizards. Now Vote asked the boys to write 2 copies of their wills. Yamano began to regret his decision. 1 copy went to Vote and the other was with the adventurers. Yamano thought that he would put it in the menu so that God would send a will to his parents. He apologized to his parents and asked them not to look at his computer and just rip out the hard drive. He thought it was important to him. Crook told the boy that after this battle he wanted to buy a slave and live happily. Yamano asked if he was really going to die. Crook did not understand why his friend was saying that. Yamano said that he should not say such things, and it did not matter why. He asked what would happen if he died here. Vote collected the wills, after which they could begin the operation. One of the adventurers went forward with a shield. Yamano used skill reset. He redistributed the points he had gained. He used high-speed spell preparation. First of all, he strengthened his combat skills. He thought that he didn't know how strong the dragon was, so he would take the big explosion instead of the small one, so the dragon would definitely be left without wings. Elizabeth said that this didn't look like Yamano. The guy asked what she was talking about. The girl admitted that Yamano had talent for magic and swordsmanship, and she also heard from the vice master of the guild Shiori that he was the only one working as a low-ranking adventurer. She said that it had nothing to do with ambition and bad intentions. Yamano said that she flattered him. The girl asked why he agreed to participate. The guy said he would tell her if she didn't laugh. The girl did not promise she wouldn't laugh. Yamano said she had to agree, even if it wasn't true. Masaru admitted that when he heard that the dragon might attack Shiori, the face of Angela, whom he wanted to protect, flashed before his eyes. Elizabeth said it was a cliché. Yamano asked if it was too rude. The girl said she was joking, but it was good when there was a reason to fight. Even Elizabeth had something she wanted to protect. She said it with malice, which made Yamano tense. Suddenly, they heard a rustling sound in the dragon's cave. As soon as they were given the command, the wizards began the spell. Everyone was ready when the dragon came out of the cave. He said a loud word to the adventurers. Orba told them to be vigilant because dragons are cunning. They always attack the one who looks the weakest. Yamano tensed up a little when he saw that the dragon was bigger than a two-story house. The dragon attacked the adventurer with the shield, causing him to slide and stop a centimeter from Yamano's face. Elizabeth told the boy to concentrate because magic cannot be interrupted. If he gets confused, they will have to start over and they will lose their chance. Orbo said that once the mages finished preparing the spell, they would lead the dragon straight to them. Yamano said that they could rely on him. Elizabeth said that mages should not give in to an enemy stronger than them, and knights too, that is what it means to have courage. The dragon was getting closer. Yamano told her not to say that, because he had lived his whole life without her. Elizabeth said that everyone had a first time for everything, and today was Yamano's turn to be brave for the first time. The girl shouted a spell that hit the dragon with force. Everyone was amazed that there was not a scratch on the monster. Elizabeth said that it was Masaru's turn. The boy exclaimed that the preparations were not finished. He did not understand why, with the speed preparation of the 5th level, it took him so long to gather magic power. She said that he could. He ordered everyone to move away from the dragon. Yamano finally finished his preparations and struck the dragon. The huge flash was followed by an explosion no smaller in size. When the smoke from the explosion cleared, Yamano noticed that he had missed. Elizabeth told the sergeant to tie them up with rope. He asked her what her plan was, since this attack had shown the dragon that they were not weak adventurers. The girl said they had to stop him before he escaped. She hadn't used it in a long time, but it should work. She said they would catch up with him using flight magic. She noticed that Yamano was shaking and told him to relax and be ready, because everything would work out. She smiled and said that he had a wind mage on his back. Yamano said that he was clearly in trouble now. Elizabeth made sure that Masaru was ready, and then gave the command to take off. Elizabeth said that she would be busy with flight magic, so she left the attack to Yamano. She asked him not to use powerful attacks because he could de-wing the dragon with a small explosion. She told him to aim better, and they gave chase. The dragon noticed this and tried to knock them down with an attack. The girl began to lose her balance, which Yamano noticed. She said that Omega Thunderstorm was her strongest magic, and it had the highest mana consumption. She barely has enough mana to get back. If they get close to the dragon, it will use physical attacks. She told Yamano to be ready for the signal. She rushed forward to the monster's face. Elizabeth said that this was their chance, because he was out of breath. Masaru was already ready to finish the magic, and could maintain it for another 10 seconds. They were going to do it. Elizabeth rose above the dragon. Yamano asked why she stopped and noticed that they were falling. As the dragon puffed, Elizabeth said that they would fly to the right, and he needed to hit the monster. When they flew up, Yamano used a small explosion. They managed to get rid of the dragon's wings. However, at the moment of falling, the dragon managed to use his breath. Elizabeth was shocked that he still had strength. She could no longer dodge. She raised her wand and used magic reflection, air hammer. With a roar, the dragon continued to fall. Yamano asked if the girl said she didn't have enough magic to return. She said she threw him away and then passed out. Together they began to fall after the dragon. Yamano pressed Elizabeth and began to search the menu for a useful skill, but he had already spent all his points. He used regeneration and wind magic imitation, which slowed down the speed of their fall, but it was not enough. At such a fall, they would have broken. He thought that in desperate situations, the same measures were needed. He pressed the meat and created a bed of wild rabbits. He hugged Elizabeth tightly, then rolled head over heels on the rabbit. He screamed in pain, but his regeneration helped him not to die. Suddenly he saw a wingless dragon approaching them. The guy was terrified. Suddenly the monster fell to the ground. On his back were Lazard and Orba. They reminded him that they said that once Yamano knocked him down, he could leave it to them. Yamano thought that they really only killed him with an axe and a sword. Suddenly the boy noticed and tried to shout to Elizabeth. He was hitting her in the face when suddenly the girl jumped up and said that she was fine, just tired due to the loss of mana. Yamano sighed. He was glad. The girl opened a bottle of drink and put it in the guy's mouth. She said it was a healing potion. She told him to look at himself. That's what happens when you make a crazy landing like that. The guy said that he had no choice, because she said that magicians should be brave. Hearing this, Elizabeth laughed. This meant that she had no right to lecture him. She thanked Masaru for saving her. Elizabeth said that it was a high-level dragon, otherwise her Omega Thunder would have been enough to win. Their guarantee is his destroyed wings. She said that if it were not for Yamano, the dragon would have escaped or killed them. Because of Yamano's nickname, Elizabeth thought he was weak, but he wasn't that bad. She said he had courage, though only the size of a wild rabbit. Vote praised Masaru and told him to send the dragon to the vault, and that would be it. They were heading home, mission complete. Along the way, Elizabeth taught the boy and told him that if he used so much mana, he would break the blade. When he succeeded, Elizabeth told him to throw one dagger, not using his muscles, but simply release it like a spell. The guy threw one and cut the tree. Elizabeth said that this was the blade enchanted by the wind. Elizabeth said that the guy can also use this technique with fire or water, or for defense in close combat. However, an iron blade breaks instantly. If he can't get orichalcum, mithril, or scarlet ore, it's better to use cheap metal to make disposable blades. The guy said it was all as expected from an expert. Elizabeth proudly said she had spent 4 years of her adventurer career on this, so he would know. Yamano was surprised and asked how old she was. Elizabeth said that she was 17 and that she became an adventurer at 13. Masaru was amazed. Elizabeth said that she was skilled, but he should not forget that she was a great wind mage. They said this at the same time, and the girl was glad that he remembered it. Yamano asked if she really liked wind magic that much. She confirmed it and said that one of the heroes who defeated the Demon King was a wind magician. Masaru asked if Elizabeth could tell him about defeating the Demon King. The girl asked why and asked if he wanted to become a fan of wind mages like her. She didn't blame Yamano, because they were cool. The guy thought he did everything right. The girl said it was an old story. Several centuries ago, a demon king lived in this world, but he was defeated by heroes. Yamano could find books about it. Elizabeth read them many times. The boy asked if the demon king was real. Elizabeth said that the legend of the heroes was the only evidence of his existence, and even that was dubious, since only they had seen him. But the girl believed that he existed, and when he returned to life, she would destroy him. Yamano exclaimed that she should not say that. He remembered that this world would be destroyed in 20 years, but he did not know why. It could have been an outbreak of a dangerous disease or a meteorite fall. It could also be the Demon King. He was told that saving the world was not important and that he should focus on testing his skills, but he forgot about it because of the hassle of everyday life. He should have discussed this with God. Elizabeth remembered that Yamano had to land in a dangerous way, which meant that he did not know levitation magic. She asked if they taught this in elementary school. The guy said that everything he knew, he learned himself, and did not know what they teach magicians. Elizabeth asked him if he wanted her to teach him. The guy said it would be great if she taught him magic. The girl said she had no choice. It was a rare chance to get such an instructor, but she couldn't refuse when Yamano bowed, touching his forehead to the ground. The guy said he didn't do it. Vote said he saw it, the city of Shiori. They returned home. After a while they were in the Adventurers Guild. Drevin showed Masaru the place and told him to get the dragon. The next moment the monster fell to the ground. One of the men told Drevin to leave the assessment to the trade guild. Drevin agreed. The man said that they would, of course, have to wait until they finished assessing the materials and could pay them the full price. After that, Drevin handed Masaru a sheet with his share for the victory. The guy looked and was shocked. He did not understand why there was so much. The man said the eyes and mouth were A+, and the do was A and C. He said it was a very reasonable price. Still, killing a dragon is a dangerous business. Drevin said that Masaru thought it was a lot because all he did was hunt rabbits. The guy thought that he could live well for a while on that money. Drevin said that Masaru had the right to 10% of everything they extracted. He asked if Yamano wanted a piece of meat or 100 kilograms. The guy said that it was too much and 50 kilograms would be enough. Suddenly, Yamano noticed that T-like was drooling over the meat. He asked the girl if she wanted to try some of this meat. He thought that he couldn't eat so much meat alone. Yamano said that she could come and eat at any time, although he was currently staying at a hotel. The girl said that she did not want to cause trouble. Yamano said that everything was fine and that he usually ate alone. He said that it did not bother him at all and that she could come whenever she wanted. The girl sighed and asked if Masaru didn't know who the servants of truth were. The guy said that their job was to recognize lies. He didn't understand where he had gone wrong. Suddenly Dreven exclaimed about the dragon meat and said that it was very tasty and the girl was lucky. He thanked Yamano. He asked Talika if she could take the book to the counter and he would put the seal on it later. The girl agreed and left. Suddenly Dreven turned to Yamano and asked if he had a minute. Later the guy was glad that he had rented the house of his dreams. It had a garden, a bath, and a well, the whole set. He fell onto the bed. He still had a lot of money left over from the dragon. He thought what a wonderful life it would be in another world. Suddenly tears started to flow from his eyes. He wanted a girl. A love group is a common thing in stories about another world. He was interested in how everything really was. Yamano found himself for the first time in a place where a man could have several wives. An unpopular guy like him could not even dream of this. He remembered a recent conversation with Dreven. The man asked if Shiori was a peaceful city. Yamano said it was. The adventurers were a bit scary, but there was order there. Dreven said that the city was built on the royal family's territory because the location was good. The city is governed by the Adventurers Guild and the Merchant Guild, but it was not always so. Before the guild was founded, chaos reigned there. The city's rulers cared only about their own interests. Many officials were involved in smuggling, organizing underground casinos, physical violence against residents, and more. Dreven said that the current eyes of the guild and he had put in a lot of effort trying to do something about it, but their abilities had their limits, and there was no one to rely on. Then they turned to the royal family for help. Yamano asked in surprise if this meant that this agent was Talika. The man confirmed it. The magic eye of the servants of truth does not read everything that is in people's heads, but while it allows one to detect lies when answering questions, there are a lot of ways to extract the truth from people. They exposed and captured many corrupt officials and people associated with them, but some of them are still in the city. Yamano assumed that Talika is in danger. Dreven said they wouldn't mind getting rid of her, but he wouldn't let that happen. He already had people assigned to her, guarding her in secret. But he said that not being happy and not having fun just because it is dangerous is too harsh. Tillich never asks for anything. Wishes or demands are very rare. So Dreven asked Masaru to take care of Tillich. He had a lot of things to do and couldn't be with her all the time. He knew it was irresponsible of him to ask, but he wanted the guy to treat her to that dragon meat. Yamano thought about the man's difficult circumstances. He jumped out of bed and said that he was the smartest, innocent, and fearless dragon slayer. He thought that they were just going to eat meat together. If there really was security, then there was nothing to worry about. He needed to get ready, but before that he wanted to go to church. The boy was met by orphans who brought him to Angela. The girl was happy. She ran up and started to feel Masaru. She noted that his hand was in place, his legs were fine, and there were no injuries. She asked if he was eating well. The boy exclaimed and asked if she was really his mother. The orphans said that Sister Angela prayed for the boy every day. The girl blushed. Yamano asked if this was true, to which the orphan said that Angela was worried all the time. Angela said that it was because she owed him a lot. Was the least she could do for Yamano. She asked him if he wanted some tea, because she was curious about what had happened in the forest. The orphans watched in silence. Yamano said that he brought Angela a couple of souvenirs. The first was boar meat. She smiled and noted that he kept his promise. The second was dragon meat. She was amazed and asked why dragon meat. The guy said that there was a dragon in the northern forest, and he took part in its murder. This was only part of the reward. Angela stopped Yamano and asked if he said that he fought against a dragon. The guy said it was, but he only knocked it down with magic. The warriors were the ones who were really in danger. Angela was silent. The guy asked what was wrong. The girl did not know what to say. Yamano was an adventurer, and she understood that sometimes he would have to take on dangerous missions, and even seeing that he successfully completed them to become a high-ranking adventurer, she should be happy. But she was worried, and it wasn't because she didn't believe in him. No matter how experienced he was, she couldn't watch him get into danger. She apologized for saying too much. She asked him to forget about it. Masaru said that he didn't know if it was okay to say that, but he said it. He thanked her for her concern. Suddenly they caught the orphans who were watching them. After a while, the guy left the church. Now he had everything he needed to cook. After the conversation, he invited Angela to a meal with dragon meat. He wanted to make something tasty. He was walking past the guild and decided to go in and look at the quests. There he noticed a nervous Croc. He said hello and asked the guy what he was doing there. He said that Croc looked very suspicious. The guy said that he was nervous. He was looking for Yamano because he didn't want to go to that place alone. The guy didn't understand him. Crook pointed with his hand to the place where the slave store was. Croc was so nervous that his stomach began to hurt. He asked the seller where the toilet was. The worker showed him to it. Yamano was left alone and bored. Suddenly he noticed someone calling him from around the corner. The old man sat the guy down. Masaru said that he was just an escort here. The old man addressed the boy by name and said that he could watch. Yamano asked in surprise how the man knew him. The old man said that the boy's exploits were already known throughout the city of Shiori. He made a big leap from a rabbit hunter to a dragon slayer. Yamano was very surprised. Yamano said that he had only torn off the dragon's wings with magic. The man asked what this did not lead to. Money is opportunity, or the ability to choose your life. And since Yamano became a dragon slayer, even more opportunities opened up for him. He rang the bell, after which several girls entered the room. The man said that he was sure that each of these girls would be happy to serve the guy. He asked which one Masaru liked the most. The guy didn't know what to do. He was surprised that the man showed their product so suddenly. They all looked at him intently. He couldn't blame them because they were looking for someone who could become their master. Suddenly he noticed one girl who was very nervous. He thought she was looking somewhere else. Masaru asked who the girl with the ears was. The old man said it was Sati, and she was a beastman. They can't use magic, but they have high physical abilities. They are good warriors, but there was one problem. The man said that Sati had bad eyesight. Because of this, she falls all the time, and she can't do housework, and no one wants to buy her. Even those who come here for the beastmen refuse. The man asked Masaru if he knew what happened to beastmen who weren't bought. The boy didn't know. The man said that they could be sent to a brothel, and that was a good option. At least they are treated like people. Those who are sent to the mines are much less lucky. He said they have to live mining ore in harsh conditions. They are exposed to dangers such as monsters, landslides, floods, and poisonous gas. Skinny people like Sweetie usually end up there. Although she has high physical indicators, there is no guarantee that she will survive there. Suddenly the girl screamed loudly that she would help the guy, so he should buy her. The girl cried. The old man screamed and asked who gave her permission to speak. Sati apologized. He apologized and said that beastmen had good hearing, and most likely she heard their entire conversation. Yamano realized that this was the man's plan. He clapped his hands and suggested continuing the viewing. At that moment, Sweetie cringed and Yamano was shocked. Later he was walking home and Sweetie was walking behind him. He thought that he had finally bought her, otherwise he would not have been able to return home. He thought that on his way home he saw Crook, who was thinking about something. He wondered if he had bought himself a slave. Suddenly, Sati fell. Yamano asked if she was okay. The girl got up and said that she was okay. She exclaimed that she could cook, clean, and wash herself. So, she begged him not to throw her out. The guy realized that she was very scared, so she was completely desperate. He extended his hand to her and asked her not to worry. He said that she had poor eyesight, so he thought that they could walk holding hands. The girl was surprised and took his hand. He thought that even though he had suggested it, he felt awkward. As they walked, he looked at the seal on her hand. It was the slave mark. By joining with a blood oath, he would be recognized as the slave's master. It granted Yamano the power to command them to some degree. But Yamano should know that if a slave refuses to carry out commands, he cannot force him. He should remember that slaves still have rights, albeit minimal ones. When a drop of his blood was dripped onto her seal, a menu window appeared in front of the guy and he got scared. The others asked in surprise what was wrong. The guy said that everything was fine. The menu popped up so suddenly, but it seemed to be invisible to everyone except Yamano himself. Looking closely, he noticed some oddities in the menu. The boys came home together. There, Sati asked where she should start. The boy asked if the girl could sit on the chair he had pulled up. He said that he wanted to try to heal her eyes. He began to cast a spell on the girl. Sati opened her eyes and admired that Masaru was a healer. The boy asked if she could see. She apologized and said that the magic hadn't worked. Since she was young, she had only seen things in front of her. She told him not to worry because she was confident in her strength and she would not get tired easily. The guy liked that she was diligent. The boy had one more method he wanted to try. The menu that appeared with the slave contract was not Yamano. This is Sati's menu. He didn't know why it appeared, but there was a skill that caught his attention. Vision deterioration. His skill, body enhancement, was doing him good. And this skill, on the contrary, gave a negative effect. He thought that there were no points in this world, and he did not see the reset of skills in her menu. He thought about how to nullify its effect. He looked at many skills that didn't suit him. Yamano thought that a skill related to vision would be enough. Suddenly he noticed something. Suddenly Yamano told her to close her eyes. The guy saw that Sati had skill points. If this menu worked like his, then everything should work out. He acquired the skill Hawkeyes. The guy asked Sati to open her eyes. The girl opened her eyes and could not contain her emotions. She remembered her parents telling her she was a worthless slob who was told she was worth less than a roadside rock. She was shunned by everyone, in her home village, in the slave shop, everywhere. She exclaimed that she thought it would never change. That she would remain worthless until the last day of her life. Yamano asked if she could see it now. The girl confirmed it. Yamano smiled and said that the house was too big for one. He wanted her to work. It would be nice to remove the dust, mow the grass in the yard, and also heat the bathtub. It's still 40 and it needs to be cleaned so that mold doesn't grow. He told her to stay alive. The girl cried heavily. She thought that right now she did not know whether she would ever be able to repay Yamano for his kindness. She exclaimed that she would help the guy. Yamano told her not to cry because she finally sees. Although she will be busy, there are also many fun things waiting for her. He asked if there was anything she wanted to eat. The girl did not know. Expectations came suddenly strong, and she was frightened by the world that opened up to her. She couldn't even imagine what was in this world. That's why she said that she would look for them together with Masaru. Masaru was slightly distracted by the notification he received. He opened his panel and hovered his finger over it to read the contents. It was feedback on the request he had left in the report. It also said that the explanations for the conditions of the test game in the world of Razgrad would be as follows. You must live for 20 years and meet certain conditions. That was all. The letter was signed with best wishes from Ito. The same thing he had said last time. When the boy wanted to know the reason for his impending death and a detailed explanation of what he should do, the god ignored him. Masaru wondered if there was a way to do it without saving the world, which was supposed to be destroyed in 20 years. For example, by forcing neighboring countries to destroy the demon's lair, although they would hardly allow it. However, he could think about that later. Today was a dragon meat dinner party, and Masaru was going to cook a dish he had really liked when he lived in Japan. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. The guy turned around, thinking it was Sati. He started to say that the girl might not have knocked, and then remembered that he had asked her to chop some wood. When Masaru opened the door, two of his teachers immediately appeared in front of him and began to indignantly ask the guy in one voice, "Who is this woman?" Elizabeth was the first to introduce herself, saying that she was Masaru's mentor in magic. The girl crossed her arms and said that the boy himself had called her here. She also revealed that when she met Masaru at the guild, he invited her to dinner, offering her dragon meat that he would cook for her that day. And finally, Elizabeth added that today she would also be practicing magic with Masaru, and that was the reason she wanted to ask her sister to leave the house. The second girl also introduced herself, saying that her name was Angela. She was Masaru's healing magic teacher. She also said that it would be better if Elizabeth went home. After the girls had a fight, they turned away from each other in different directions. Masaru got a little nervous, asking the girl why the two of them were fighting after barely meeting each other. Suddenly, another girl appeared between them, walking past them, completely ignoring the noise. Talika asked if the meat was ready. Masaru greeted the girl, saying that they had to wait a little longer. The man started to leave the house, waving to Masaru. He asked the boy to take care of Tilak and then disappeared through the door. Masaru turned to the slot and invited the girls to sit down. Elizabeth turned to Masaru and told the boy that she really hoped that Angela was not the girl the boy had told her about earlier. Angela blushed deeply, as did Masaru. The conversation was about the girl Masaru was going to protect. Angela called the boy by name, and Masaru immediately replied that he had spoken in a broad sense without any special meaning. Seeing Angela's dejected look, Masaru began waving his hands, telling her not to misunderstand him because this also concerns her and, for the most part. Angela began to calm down gradually, and Elizabeth, who no longer wanted to quarrel, simply thanked for the invitation. The girl began to gradually approach the table. Finally, when everyone was seated, Masaru brought out a plate and thanked everyone for waiting. He said it was meat that had been dipped in beaten egg and breaded. It was then fried in oil. Masaru also added that it was a special dish from his homeland called katsu, and since they were made from dragon meat, it turned out to be dragon katsu. Everything looked absolutely delicious on the plate. Elizabeth suddenly said that it was the first time she had heard of someone cooking by frying something in oil. Masaru explained that it was because the firewood did not produce the right temperature. Masaru added that he had to use fire magic to raise the temperature of the oil to such an extent that it actually began to boil in the pan. The guy said that whatever it was time to eat. He also added that the katsu needed to be topped with sauce. Angela laughed, saying that she thanked the owner of this house for his efforts. As soon as the girls started to pick up the cutlery, they immediately began to cut the katsu into small pieces. The meat was incredibly crunchy, and the sight of it simply made your eyes sparkle. Piece by piece, the meat began to fly off the table quickly. The girls were very pleased and continued to crunch on the dragon katsu, praising the dish. They especially appreciated the breading, which was very pleasant to the taste. Also, the fat that was in the katsu simply melted in the mouth, and they said that they had never eaten such a delicious thing. Masaru smiled widely, saying that he was very glad that the girls liked him. Suddenly, Elizabeth called out to the guy, saying that she had long wanted to ask him something. Eli looked at Sati and said that the girl had a mark on her hand. The mark looked like a prisoner's mark, so Elizabeth thought that he had bought it. Masaru said that was true. The guy grabbed the bread, which he began to break, and said that the trafficker of unfree people was going to send her to the mines if no one bought the girl, so he could not leave her there. Elizabeth said they should have told the boy that people like Sati had rights too. The merchant lied to him to play on his pity and make him buy her. Masaru started to get indignant, but Angela immediately said that it was a wonderful acquisition in her opinion. It seemed that Sati was hardworking. And besides, beastmen are very strong and therefore many noble people prefer them as guards. The girl put her mug back on the table, then looked up at the young man. Elizabeth winked and said that Masaru probably didn't regret having bought someone like Sachi. Masaru scratched his head and smiled, saying that he didn't regret it at all. Angela also joined in, turning her attention to Tillich. She asked if this girl with different eyes was a servant of truth. Masaru said that her name was Talika and that she was a third-rank truth-keeper. It was she who said that she wanted to eat dragon meat, and that was how he came up with the idea for this dinner. Joyful Elizabeth immediately turned to the servant of truth, saying that it was thanks to her that they were now eating such delicious dragon meat. The girl thanked Talika. Soon their joint lunch was over. All the girls had completely eaten the contents of their portions and carefully put the utensils inside the plate. Summing up, everyone repeated that it was very tasty. Elizabeth stood up from the table and exclaimed that now was the time to practice her magic for good digestion. Masaru turned to Sati and asked her to wash the dishes. Sati smiled and said that Masaru could rely on her. Suddenly, someone pulled the girl's robe towards themselves. It was Talika who said that she would also like to help clean up. Masaru turned around and noticed Sati's happy face, who immediately agreed. Talika asked the girl to teach her how to wash dishes. At that moment, Angela approached the young man and said that she would go with them. Things got heated again between the two magic teachers. Elizabeth immediately said that she would prefer Angela not to interfere. Angela replied that she did not need her permission. However, they were different from Sati and Talika, who had already started to get along. After a while, Masaru was already practicing in the courtyard, practicing the levitation spell. Masaru said that he himself considered himself a good student. The guy thought that with a cheat, everything was really much easier. Angela came closer and said that now it was time for the main actress to go on stage. The girl said that she also had magic that she could teach. Water began to appear under her feet, which began to raise the girl and surround her with a water shell. The water that splashed around and was under Angela's control completely repeated all her hand movements, and then a stream suddenly appeared that hit the tree. Masaru was surprised and even a little scared. Angela smiled and apologized for having to wet the garden. It was a water spell and it was called Water Whip. Angela also added that the boy should first practice with Water Ball as a basic spell. Masaru was delighted, because water magic was an unexplored area for him. Elizabeth watched all this for a while, but then she began to speak slowly, drawing attention to herself. The girl said that according to the principles of magic, it is impossible to use two spells at the same time. This means that Masaru won't be able to heal himself while levitating. However, if the boy mixes them together, he will be able to use a completely new magic, and Elizabeth is ready to teach it. Angela chuckled, and then said that water magic could be used to create drinking water, which could be very useful during long journeys. Looking back at her rival, Elizabeth immediately said that Masaru has spatial magic to store things, so he can just take the entire lake with him if he wants. Masaru was confused by the pressure from his teachers, who clearly wanted to draw his attention to themselves. They spoke in one voice again, asking what kind of magic he wanted to learn. Meanwhile, inside the house, Tilika and Sati were studying. It was much quieter and more peaceful than in the courtyard of the house. Tilika pointed to words in the book and said what they meant. This was not the first grammar lesson with Masaru's maid. She was doing great and was grateful to Tilika. Suddenly, the door opened and Sati greeted her master again. Masaru silently walked into the room and fell onto the bed, burying his face in the pillow. Sati ran up to him worriedly, shouting her master's name. The young man said that he simply ran out of mana since he had to learn magic from both of them. He turned slightly and added that these two were scary women by nature. After Masaru passed out, Angela and Elizabeth came into the room, feeling a little ashamed of their behavior. The girls apologized for overdoing it. After a few hours, Masaru began to wake up gradually. He immediately heard several voices and smelled the sweet scent of soap. A girl's voice addressed him, asking if he was awake. In the room in front of him stood all 4 girls who had been his guests earlier. They were dressed in home clothes. Masaru immediately asked indignantly why they were in pajamas. Elizabeth said that Tilika wanted to stay with Sati. Angela immediately added that she had no reason to stay there. Eli immediately got angry, saying that she didn't have to explain anything to her at all. Angela calmly clasped her hands together and said that preventing forbidden relationships was the duty of a servant of God. Elizabeth indignantly said that she was shameless. Sati added that everyone explained their reasons for staying and then went to get a change of clothes and they took a bath. She apologized for doing all this without the master's permission. Masaru was pleased that he would be spending the night with the girls. He immediately said that everything was fine and there was enough room for everyone. The guy urged them to make themselves comfortable, saying that the house was big. But there was still something that bothered Masaru. He turned to the girls and indignantly asked why they had all decided to settle down in his room. Elizabeth smiled, saying that it just happened that way. Masaru looked at Sati, waiting for an explanation. The girl hesitated a little, then said that she was doing her duty. Servants like her are supposed to stay close to their masters, and if he orders her, she can even sleep in the same bed with him. At that moment, Masaru choked, and the room fell into a deathly silence. Angela said that it was too early for them to do such things. Elizabeth supported her, saying that there should be order here. Masaru glared at them, saying that at such moments they agreed with each other. Masaru gritted his teeth. He had never thought that sleeping in the same room with Sati could lead to this. If he threw her out the door, the girl would probably cry. Suddenly, lightning struck outside the window, and it started to rain. Elizabeth screamed in fear. Masaru saw and asked if the girl was afraid, and when Eli began to deny it, Tilika immediately declared that she was guilty. Elizabeth apologized and said that even though she could use lightning magic, she was still afraid that it would hit her. If it was embarrassing that everyone would find out about it. Angela plopped down on the bed and picked up, saying that she was afraid of spiders, but only small ones, not big spiders, monsters. If one appeared in the room in front of her, she would not be able to drive it away. Angela lay down on the bed and began to close her eyes, saying that everyone has something they are afraid of. Elizabeth looked at her, then thought for a moment and blushed slightly. She started to climb onto Masaru's bed after him, saying that if a spider came out, she could chase it away for Angela. Angela agreed, and the others started to smile. Sati said that it was time for them to sleep, and the girls started telling Masaru to lie down here too. Soon, everyone was lying down on one bed, snuggling tightly against each other. The next day, Elizabeth and Masaru went hunting, where they were going to catch some wild rabbits. The girl praised the guy, saying that he was doing great. Elizabeth also began to stretch her arms, saying that she could also practice magic at the beginner level. She thought it would be nice to hunt once in a while. The girl suddenly turned to Masaru and said that something was bothering her. Wild rabbits didn't count, of course, but in all other respects there was a limit to what an adventurer could do alone. That's why she suggested that he give Sati a chance to prove herself on the trip. The guy thought about it, and then they started to return home. Angela was sitting at the table making a copy of the Holy Book. She greeted the boys and asked if the hunt had been a success. Masaru said that it had gone well, since that was his specialty. Afterwards, Masaru asked Tilika if the girl would stay overnight. Tilika said that Drebin was happy when he found out that she had an older sister and gave his permission. Masaru was surprised when he heard this. Tilika rushed into Sati's arms and said that she felt this gust of wind carrying the atmosphere of an older sister. Masaru turned to Elizabeth and Angela and asked what about the two of them. Elizabeth said that she had already spoken to the Battle Axe of Dawn and could do whatever she wanted because she was no longer a child. Angela said that she was doing well too. She added that Masaru was always helping out at the hospital, so the priest Roberto, in other words, her boss, trusted the guy. And yet Angela thought about it. She thought that Roberto would scold her for thinking too much, because she was going to a man's house, and he didn't. Sati approached the gentleman and gently pinched his clothes. She asked Masaru shyly if he was still okay with the girl becoming an adventurer. Sati added that she wanted to help Masaru. The young man said that Sati's wishes in choosing an occupation were a priority, but he did not want to put her in danger. Masaru couldn't even imagine that a simple research mission could end in a fight with a dragon, and this is not uncommon. Afterwards, he declared that he could earn money on his own. The two magic teachers smiled approvingly, saying that this was some kind of overprotectiveness. Masaru replied that he was mistrustfully extending a stone bridge and then going around. By this, the guy meant that he was very careful. Afterwards, Masaru suddenly asked where Sati could read books to learn new words. The guy added that they were very expensive, and the ones he had were difficult to read. Angela said that they had picture books in the church and he could take them if he asked permission. Masaru said that he would go there then and then invited Sati to go with him. Talika said that it was time for her to go back to work. Masaru thought about it and decided that they would see her off first. Elizabeth was going to go about her business and go home. Masaru, Angela, and Sati approached the entrance of the church. Almost immediately they saw several knights at the threshold. The young man thought that it was quite lively here today. Priest Roberto saw the boy and raised his hand, calling him by name. The man said that he was just in time. Masaru came closer and asked what was the matter. The priest smiled and said that the Knights Templar had arrived today, a special order in the service of the church. It was for this reason that he wanted to take the chance to meet some of them. The second man also introduced himself, saying that his name was Tijin. He was the captain of the Vajra Corps of the Temple Knights. Tijin had also heard that the boy had taken care of many suffering people. The boy's actions were comparable to those of wandering priests who asked neither for fame nor money. Masaru smiled and said that he was not that outstanding, and besides, it was good practice for him. Tijin smiled and said that it was just great, because good deeds attract gods. Masaru laughed, thinking that one of them was definitely watching him, and remembered Ito. Roberto continued, explaining that Tijin was here to prepare for the knight's expedition to the pioneer village on the border of the Demon Lands, the first time Masaru had heard of such a thing. Roberto explained that this village serves as a base for attacking the Demon Lands, so a strong fortress will be built there. The knights of the church and many adventurers are coming to protect its construction. Tijin turned to the boys and said that they had stopped here to buy provisions for the journey. However, there were many food lovers in their order, so they were thinking of placing an order with the guild to buy food. Masaru thought for a moment, then said that they could have it. He took out the rabbits from his inventory, apologizing for the fact that they were raw. The guy was willing to share it for free. Angela asked the reason why the boy couldn't sell them his catch. Masaru explained that when he first came to Shiori, his life was saved in the church, and he would be in time for another hunt. Tijin began to shake from this act. He almost began to cry, after which he said that he was deeply touched by this. He said that the title of rabbit hunter truly suited him. Tijin pointed his hand at the line of knights and shouted, addressing them. They all immediately stood at attention. The captain called on them to thank the young man as was proper. The boy was stunned by such enthusiasm, but Roberto, who was standing behind him, apparently did not like it very much. Soon Angela pointed to books that might be suitable for Sati. Basically, these were various fairy tales that the boy found interesting. While Sati was sitting next to him, a boy crept up to her and grabbed her by the tail. Sati quickly turned around and saw several children. A little girl turned to Angela and asked if her sister could play with them today. The girl said that she was busy. Masaru looked at Sati and asked if the girl could play with the children until they finished. Sati smiled and said that they could rely on her. The children were pleased that their older sister would take care of them. They immediately noticed her cute ears and tail. The boy squeezed it again and Sati jumped up, asking him not to do that again. Masaru knew very well that they should hurry. A couple of hours had passed, and Sati was already completely tired. The girl realized that she had underestimated the child's endurance and hyperactivity. Sati smiled and thought that now she was cooking, washing, setting the table, and now taking care of the children. She would never have thought that when she left the prisoner's shop. Suddenly, Sati noticed a boy sitting apart from everyone else. She approached him and asked what had happened. She offered him to join in, but the boy immediately said that he would not play. The boy looked at the church sister and said that he would really like to chop wood. He was told that it was too early for the boy to do that because he was not strong enough. Sati sat down next to him, hugging her legs. She asked if the boy really wanted to help his sisters. The child nodded several times, and Sati said that she was the same. Sati said that she wanted to help someone important to her, but he left her. Now she knows that she can help him in other ways, but at the same time she understands the boy's feelings and desires perfectly. Sati happily told the boy not to worry, because when he grows up, he will definitely be allowed to chop wood and help. He asked her a counter question, whether to decide on her wish this way. Sati pressed her ears back and laughed, saying that she didn't know for sure. Masaru and Angela were standing behind the wall at that moment and heard everything. Angela said that sometimes the desire to protect is not useful. Masaru was lost in his thoughts, asking himself, couldn't Sati just let him protect her? Later in the evening, the boy and the others were already home, and Masaru decided to take a bath. While Masaru was relaxing peacefully, his nirvana was interrupted by Sati, who came into the bathroom. The guy immediately screamed, surprised by such a visit. Sati said that she just wanted to rub his back. Masaru turned away at first, saying that everything was fine, but despite all that, Sati was a girl and shouldn't come in like that. Sati became embarrassed and then asked if she was useful to the master at all. The girl said that when she was still in the store, a certain Selma was very kind to her. It was she who said that people like them should do something nice for their owners. Sati noticed that Masaru had never asked her for anything serious, neither as a woman nor as an adventurer. Now Masaru understood why the girl wanted to sleep with him from time to time. Masaru said that in his homeland there were no people like Sati, so he does not know about such customs. It is for this reason that he wants the girl to value her freedom. Now Sati realized that she had been behaving inappropriately all this time. Masaru said that it wasn't her fault, it was just cultural differences. He also wanted to say something about her desire to become an adventurer. Masaru turned to Sati and said that he wasn't trying to hurt her when he told the girl no. He just didn't want to put her in danger when she had a lot of fun things to do. Afterwards, Masaru folded his arms across his chest and firmly said that the girl's feelings were much more important to him, so from now on he would allow her to become an adventurer. Masaru also scratched his head and added that it was becoming more difficult for him to complete tasks alone, so Sati could help him. The girl rushed to hug Masaru. Sati clung to the boy, telling him how grateful she was. The girl also added that she might not be of much use at first, but she would grow stronger and protect her master. A memory appeared in Sati's head, where she also hugged Selma, and then the girl told her, people are not equal from birth, but if someone buys you, then you will be happy. Selma insisted that this was a right that no one could take away from them. Sati mentally called out to her mentor and thought that she was very happy right now. The next day, Masaru went to the marketplace and returned with the female version of his outfit that Sati had bought. When the girl tried on the outfit, everyone was pleasantly surprised. Elizabeth said that the outfit really suited the girl, Angela was glad that Masaru finally gave his permission, and Talika simply noted that her older sister looked cool. Sati smiled and clenched her fists, saying that from now on she would try her best as an adventurer in Masaru's team and the world around her would become bigger. Once everything was ready, they went to the training ground. Masaru told the girl to try hard and introduced her to instructor Samson. Sati was glad to see such an impressive teacher. The man said that Masaru could rely on him. The girl was clearly physically strong, as one would expect from a beastman. Samson had a very loud voice and kept almost shouting, saying that he was already waiting for the achievements that Sati would make. Masaru asked the man not to shout, because the beastman had sensitive hearing. So, Sati would soon have her first sortie, but before that, she needed to be given some skills and stat boosts. Besides, Masaru didn't know how to explain the cheat to her. After all, the moment he healed her eyes, he explained that it was just healing magic. Walking further, Masaru suddenly saw Elizabeth talking to someone. Elizabeth greeted the boy immediately upon seeing him. The young man said that he was already home and thanked Eli for looking after him while he was away. Afterwards, Masaru looked back and said that the girl seemed familiar to him. She introduced herself as Nania. Nania had heard that Elizabeth was helping the young man learn magic. Nania turned to Eli and said that in that case she should say goodbye to Masaru properly. The boy did not understand what was being said. Elizabeth said that she understood everything. Elizabeth also said that Nania should also sort out her business. The girl became embarrassed, then turned around and started to leave. Eli turned to the guy and suggested that they talk inside. When they got inside the house, they both settled down on the sofa almost immediately. Elizabeth said that she was going to the pioneer village on the border with the demon lands. It was really unexpected for the young man. Elizabeth said that they were adventurers after all and it was their duty, and her friend Nania was also worried about something. Elizabeth stretched her arms out in front of her and asked if the boy remembered Orba, the leader of the Battle Axe of Dawn. Masaru replied that he did and introduced the boy with the axe. Elizabeth said that the two were in love, but even now, going to the battlefield, they didn't really move anywhere, they just held hands and kissed once. Elizabeth said it was bittersweet love because the boys weren't young enough for that kind of crap. It seemed like they'd done everything but never took care of themselves. Masaru noticed something and said that Nanya and Elizabeth never acted like ordinary adventurers, not a bit rude, as if they had a good education. Elizabeth said that was true. Elizabeth said that they were nobles. Masaru was surprised. The girl added that nobles usually don't work as adventurers except for fun, but they do have a reason. Masaru apologized for interfering in her personal affairs. Elizabeth immediately said that she didn't mind telling him since he was so worried. Eli said they became adventurers to send money home. Nanya is a knight who has served her since childhood. She followed Elizabeth knowing full well what dangers awaited them. She was like a family member. But Nanya was already 24 years old, and if she got married, it would be a late marriage. Masaru thought about how marriage after 20 was considered late in this world. Elizabeth said that it was time for her to think more about her beloved than about her, and that was okay. Then she turned to Masaru and asked why he had such a wild rabbit face. Masaru said that he was just thinking at that moment how cool Elizabeth was. The girl was very surprised. The young man explained that, as a veteran, he still continues to worry about his loved ones. Masaru thought it was really cool. Elizabeth responded by saying that the guy also looked awesome when he fought the dragon. An awkward silence fell between them, which was broken by Elizabeth. The girl called Masaru by name and said that if he didn't mind, she would like to invite him to go. Masaru turned around abruptly and shuddered in fear. Talika, who had crept up on him, had scared him. The guy asked how long the girl had been there. Talika answered that from the words, "You're so cool, Elizabeth." A few days later, Elizabeth was ready to leave. She stood in the courtyard and said goodbye to all the girls. Everyone wished her to take care of herself and be careful. Sati said that she would miss her. Immediately after these words, Elizabeth turned to Masaru and asked if he would miss her. The guy was embarrassed, after which he answered that he would. Elizabeth immediately smiled and said that she understood him. Then she added that she was not so carefree as to stay overnight at a guy's house just like that, if he understood what she meant. She had already started to gradually leave, and Masaru could not say anything after her, making only incoherent sounds. Elizabeth turned and said that the guy was very indecisive. The girl came up close to Masaru and kissed him on the lips. They both blushed, after which Elizabeth asked if Masaru understood everything now. The girl said that it was her first kiss, which the young man could consider an honor reserved only for him. Then she turned her back and began to walk away. Angela smiled and said that Elizabeth was like a typhoon. Masaru said that in the past he confessed to a girl he knew, but to her he was just a friend who was nice to chat with. They were so awkward then that they had to move away from each other. Masaru was so embarrassed by this that he was afraid of getting burned again. He was overcome by all sorts of feelings, but it seemed to him that no one would love him again. Afterwards, the guy slowly said Elizabeth's name and asked if he understood everything correctly. Angela said that she really liked him and there was no misunderstanding. Elizabeth simply had to gather the courage to express her feelings, and that was the reason why Masaru had to accept them. The young man agreed to this. Then he turned to Angela and said that he initially thought they didn't get along. Angela smiled and said that was just the beginning. After all, as soon as they met, they immediately realized that they were each other's rivals. Masaru didn't quite understand what was being discussed. Angela turned around and said that she liked Masaru too. After that, Angela immediately turned away and asked Masaru to understand her correctly. Masaru froze in place and his eyes and face gradually began to become brighter. The guy suddenly fell to the ground. Sati was scared, and the guy only said that it felt like his stomach had burst. He, Yamano Masaru, 23, is lying on the ground and can't get up from the popularity among girls that has fallen on him. A couple of days passed and Masaru was helping Angela in the hospital with sick people. After helping one of the men, Masaru told him not to overexert himself, as healing magic does not compensate for blood loss. The man took off the bandages and happily thanked the guys. Afterwards, she went to the exit, and when there was no one left inside except Angela and Masaru, awkwardness arose between them. Masaru suddenly started first, saying that he wanted to talk about the girl's recent confession. Masaru admitted that he still had mixed feelings and needed to sort it out. Now he can't give the girl any exact answer, but he will definitely notify her if she gives him some time. Angela smiled and said that she can wait. Meanwhile, Sati was already finishing her training with Samson. The instructor said that now they could rest, and after the break they would practice one of 3 types of shooting at close range. Sati couldn't stop thinking about yesterday. She thought that Elizabeth and Angela were really cool because they were able to directly state their feelings. The girl became sad and thought with embarrassment that if she also confessed her feelings to Master Masaru, the girl thought about what words she would choose. Suddenly, a certain realization came to her. The girl thought that she was not supposed to think about such things because she was Masaru's servant. Sati began to shake her head in different directions to drive away the thoughts. After that, Samson returned to the arena and said that the break was over, so it was time for everyone to return to training. The loud sound of the bell from the tower attracted the attention of everyone on the training ground. All those involved rushed straight to the main square, where meetings on such occasions usually took place. Masaru found Sati, and the girl immediately said that the guildmaster would tell everything right now. The man looked around and said that a horse ranch north of town was being attacked by a flock of harpies right now. They were most likely the same monsters that had fled the northwestern forest after being chased by the dragon. The master said they would join the city soldiers and fight them off together. The reward for the lions was higher than for killing the harpies. They needed archers, mages, and those who could fight the flyers. Afterwards, the master raised his hand and shouted that together they would not let a single harpy reach the city. So, it was time to earn some money. Everyone began to rejoice loudly. Masaru said he would go with the others. Sati said he would go too, and now he even knew how to use a bow a little. Besides, they couldn't stay in the city if they couldn't protect the ranch. Masaru thought that it would be better if Sati's first experience was easy, but what can he do if she is so eager to fight? He opened the panel and said that he would give her a good luck charm before that. The girl felt something. Masaru said that he would explain everything later. Right now, she just needed to know that he had improved his sword and bow techniques as much as possible. The guy said that the girl may not believe him, but this power will protect her. Sati said that she understood everything, and she believes the master. After that, they went to protect the city. At the ranch, the battle with the harpies was already in full swing. Someone shouted that the soldiers had already entered the battle and called on all the adventurers to be more confident and advance forward. Masaru told Sati to keep shooting. The boy would feed them arrows from his storage whenever needed. Sati said she would do so. Masaru attacked with fire arrows, knocking the harpies to the ground. Sati continued firing her bow, amazed that the arrows were flying exactly where she wanted them to. But there were too many harpies and some special tactics were needed to at least somehow equalize the forces. Masaru began to think of a possible way out of the situation. The boy understood that now he would need the skill that he had recently learned, thanks to Elizabeth's advice. That same skill of combining 2 spells. Then the girl said that it was much simpler than Masaru could imagine. She said that the example could be taken of a fire arrow. It flies to the target due to the combination of fire and levitation. Spells are just a name for various manifestations and movements of mana. That is, depending on your understanding, magic can be anything. Masaru knew that releasing a firestorm here would be dangerous, but if he combined it with other spells and then directed it at one point, it should work. Masaru decided to call the new spell Hellfire. He shouted its name. The adventurers noticed that there was still a crowd of harpies approaching and they needed to spread out. Masaru crouched down and placed his hands on the ground. A stream of fire passed along the ground and then shot up at a right angle, beginning to burn the harpies. The adventurers turned to the boy, saying that it was quite good. This gave them the impetus to begin a new offensive, but the harpies, on the contrary, looked confused. The harpies began to emit their cry in one voice. It converged into one resonance and began to deafen the fighting knights and adventurers, as well as Masaru himself. Everyone covered their ears when suddenly Masaru noticed that Sati was shouting something at him. He was just starting to come to his senses and realized that the threat was approaching from behind him. The harpy grabbed the boy's back and began to carry him away. Masaru realized that he hadn't even noticed her approaching because of that very scream. Sati tried to do something about it and immediately opened fire only on the harpies that were circling around the young man, but all the other monsters also rushed towards the young man. Masaru tried to fight back with his sword, but everyone knew that the guy was definitely in bad shape. He definitely needed help because he couldn't handle this alone. They attacked without stopping, not giving the guy a chance to even try to heal himself. Sati continued shooting, but there was no end to the attacking harpies. The harpies were increasingly searching for weak spots, and the boy's strength was beginning to run out. Each subsequent blow reached its target, and the harpies simply tore the boy's body with their claws. Sati realized that she couldn't do much with her bow, so she grabbed her sword and charged. The boy was surrounded. Sati shouted that she would save her master. But just as Sati was about to reach her goal, Masaru ordered her to run. The mark that the girl had worked, and she involuntarily turned around and began to carry out the order. The guy continued to be cut up, and he began to think that he had never been with a girl. He was impatiently waiting for the second season of his favorite anime and wanted to watch the announcements on the internet one more time. Amidst the cries of the adventurers, Masaru wondered if his will, which he had put in the menu, would reach his parents. He certainly had something to say to Angela and Elizabeth. Masaru soon realized that he did not want to die like this, especially in this place. Tears flowed from his eyes, and the harpies continued to inflict severe wounds on him. Sati took one arrow from her quiver and damaged her mark. The girl screamed that Masaru had given her so much, he had allowed her to see this world, to feel the warmth of the dinner table, and had given her care. She said that she lives for Masaru because he gave her the meaning of life. Even if she is torn apart, she is ready to protect him. The girl again rushed with a sword at the harpies. But there were too many monsters. After striking a few blows and driving away just a couple of individuals, several more began to attack Sati, who was in their way. They grabbed her from behind and began to lift her off the ground. Sati screamed loudly, continuing to fight back. She knew she couldn't give in. Masaru watched, blood spurting from his mouth. The boy fell to his knees. Sati was just in front of Masaru and saw how the harpies gradually gained victory over the girl. The last thing she said was a request to the master to run away. Soon Sati's voice touched the ground, and the girl stopped resisting. The girl's brave wish never came true. Masaru shouted her name, not believing that she could die. Masaru tried to break free, but he couldn't. He saw how Sati had already turned her back on him and was walking away with a smile on her face. The young man was shouting her name louder and louder. The harpies held him tightly and he could only stretch his arm forward. With their tongues hanging out, the hungry monsters flew towards Sati, and Masaru continued to tear his vocal cords, screaming for her to run. Suddenly Masaru opened his eyes sharply and rushed forward. He was in his bed, covered in cold sweat. The guy realized that this was all a dream, which he had seen more than once. Masaru came out of his room completely broken. Sati noticed him going into the living room and immediately turned to the guy. The girl smiled and wished the gentleman a good morning. She also added that tomorrow is already ready and invited the gentleman to the table. Masaru smiled and asked how things were with the girl's wounds, whether they had healed. Sati said that it was almost over and she expected to return to training after rehabilitation. Masaru smiled and said that he had never heard of such a thing. Sati asked what Masaru would be doing today. The guy held a toast in his hand and answered that he would most likely just be at home today. Silence fell between them and they continued eating breakfast. Images from that very day when they fought the harpies kept flashing in Masaru's mind. The harpies actually almost killed Sati and Masaru. At the very last moment, one of the harpies was pierced by several ice spears, which threw the monster aside. The adventurers were glad, saying that better late than never. It was the knights of the temple who immediately raised the general morale. Captain Tijin ordered the warriors to attack the monsters. The knights immediately pushed the monsters back, and the captain himself thanked God for being able to hear the bell ringing, announcing the emergency, because he had almost left the city for the village. One of the knights immediately ran up to the bleeding youth. Masaru's condition seemed extremely dire. The warrior immediately cast a healing spell. Masaru began to open his eyes and come to his senses. The knight immediately removed his hand, saying that it seemed he had made it after all. Suddenly, he received a punch to his helmet. Masaru began to cover himself with his hands, screaming for them to leave him alone. He continued to fight until the knight grabbed his arm and asked him to calm down, calling him by name. The man lifted his helmet, telling Masaru to look at it. He introduced himself as a knight of the temple and said that he was on the boy's side. Masaru began to look around. The boy immediately apologized when he realized what he had done. Masaru said that he had simply panicked and struck without thinking. The knight told the boy not to worry, as they had strong equipment. The knight turned and said that they had also managed to heal Masaru's companion. He saw that Sati was alive and rising to her feet. The second knight said that they still had time to help the others. He wished Masaru to take care of himself, after which the knights began to move away. Masaru jumped to his feet as nimbly as he could and shouted the name of his maid, rushing to run towards her. When Sati saw Masaru running towards her, she lowered her ears guiltily and apologized for letting the master down and ignoring his order. But when the guy ran up, he immediately hugged her. He continued to hold her tightly to himself, telling her with his last efforts that she was alive. Sati hugged her master back, and large drops of tears began to form on her face. The girl apologized again and said that she didn't have as much strength as Masaru. The guy said that he thought he would die, but most of all he was afraid of losing her, Sati. Sati then thought that she was content to help Masaru. She did housework, became an adventurer, and became his support in everything she could do well. The girl took herself by the shoulders and thought that she could not do anything more for Masaru, because she remained his servant. Afterwards, she went to the table, where she began to study. The girl began to copy the holy book again when suddenly the doorbell rang. Sati was surprised at who could come. When she opened the door, she saw Angela. Angela immediately smiled and asked if Masaru was home. Sati apologized, saying that no matter how many times she came, but unfortunately, the girl didn't have time to finish, as Angela immediately said that Masaru had not appeared in the church for a long time. She also heard that the guy does not go to the Adventurers Guild. Finally, Angela asked if she could see Masaru. Sati replied that her master had ordered that no one should be allowed to see him for a while. Angela was very upset. Masaru just wanted to relax and be alone with himself. The guy opened the book and sat on the bed, saying that probably no one would have thought that he would become unemployed again, only in another world. Masaru picked up one of the books and said that the hero was amazing. His hometown was destroyed and he was badly injured, but he continued on and eventually defeated the Demon King. And it was a true story. The guy lifted his legs onto the bed and hugged them. He whispered that he lacked the courage and self-confidence for this, and besides, he didn't even have the third volume of this book. Angela made several attempts and came every day, sometimes several times a day, but Sati still shook her head from side to side, saying that the master was not in a good mood. One day Angela came again, but Sati's answer was obvious again. Angela said that she knew all this, but she really wanted to see Masaru. Sati let Angela through and she went upstairs. When the girl knocked on the door, Masaru opened it and was very surprised. She asked not to be angry with Sati because she had persuaded the maid. Afterwards, with the young man's permission, she entered the room and sat down on the bed. Angela said that she was very worried about him. Afterwards, she said that she wanted to talk about the horse ranch. Angela heard that there was serious fighting there. It was especially hard for Masaru himself because he found himself in a very dangerous position. The guy answered that he had already been in such a situation. The boy remembered a story about being chased by wild rabbits. He also fought a dragon, but this time everything was completely different, not like before. Masaru said that he really thought that day was the end. He thought that he was going to die for real, but that's not all, because he almost dragged Sachi with him in that battle. Masaru screamed that he couldn't even save anyone back then and that he was just naive. Angela countered by saying that it wasn't true. When she went to the Adventurers Guild, she learned a lot. People said that from the moment Masaru struck with his magic until he fell, he was very brave. Everyone wanted to thank him, and also convey their regrets for not being able to help and protect him. Angela continued to speak in a raised voice, saying that Masaru, having known fear in the battle with monsters, still continued to fight to protect the people and the city. Many were grateful to him for this. Afterwards, she said that this was the Masaru she respected to the depths of her soul. The young man stared at Angela in surprise. Masaru seemed speechless. He started to say that if you listened to her, everything he did was not in vain. Angela said that it was, and then hugged the guy. She said that the guy was a good guy, and that he was already known as a local hero. Masaru immediately blushed and then began to cry. Afterwards, the guy came to his senses, saying that he was already a grown man, and burst into tears. He was a little ashamed, but Angela said that it was normal. The girl was glad that he was better. Angela turned timidly and asked Masaru if he understood the reason why she was so worried about him. The boy agreed and immediately understood why Sati had let her in. The girl said that her feelings for him had not changed. Angela would really like to hear the guy's answer. Masaru blushed, after which he said that he liked Angela too. After some time, Masaru gradually came to his senses. They finished the treatment in the hospital, and Angela allowed him, saying that she would brew tea for the magicians. The young man volunteered to help her. When their hands touched, the boys looked at each other and laughed. The children saw it through the window, as well as the older sister, who also did not understand what happened between these two. Roberto's father passed by and said that it was not nice to peek. The sister apologized and said that she would only be happy if everything went well for the girl she had raised since childhood. Father Roberto replied that Masaru could be relied upon as an adventurer and more, so he was a worthy candidate. Angela asked what Masaru would do today. Masaru decided that he hadn't worked out for a long time. The guy returned home, changed into his gear, and went hunting for wild rabbits. First, the guy sneaked up using the silence skill. When he got to the right distance, he began to attack with magic daggers, hitting the rabbits. Masanu chased away the rabbits and thus completed his task. Now all that was left was to report to the owner of the field. Sati approached the master and said that he had dealt with them very skillfully. Masaru suddenly asked about Sachi's Hawkeye skill. The girl said that her vision was blurry at first, but after the healing yesterday, she was finally able to get it back to normal. Masaru said that in that case, the girl could look for monsters nearby, because now she had excellent hearing and sharp eyesight. He thought that she would definitely succeed. The girl looked into the distance, and then pointed her finger in one direction, saying that there was a lone orc there. Masaru didn't see him, but asked if she could aim. Sati said she would try. Sati took good aim and fired. She said she hit it, and then they went to check. Masaru said it was just amazing and the power of the bow was monstrous. Sati said that he taught her everything, thanks to the cheat. The guy said that he got it when he went to the employment agency in his country. You can't believe it right away. The girl said that she actually received another mysterious power, different from magic. Masaru himself is not one to lie, so she believes him as herself. The guy thanked Sati. Masaru also said that this is power, however, it can't do everything. For example, his sword mastery level is 5, the maximum, but he still can't defeat Sergeant Vogt from the training camp. Although it allows you to improve your abilities, it does not give you the ability to make decisions faster and does not increase your physical strength. However, he speaks from his own experience and feelings. The boy smiled and said that Sati's efforts would definitely bear fruit. She would definitely become a first-class warrior. Sati blushed and said thank you. But Masaru said that the cheats were their shared secret. When they returned to the Adventurers Guild, Sati said that she could take the rabbit meat herself if Masaru didn't want to hand it over himself. But Masaru decided to go in because he really wanted to. When he opened the door, everyone immediately turned to look at him and froze. Someone slapped the guy on the back, causing him to scream. The man asked the boy why he had a sour face. He helped them in the battle with the harpies, and his pillar of fire saved the situation. They were then able to regroup and regain their strength. Afterwards, he also apologized for not being able to help Masaru back then. The second man smiled and added that he and the Temple Knights later helped heal many wounded on the battlefield. Masaru said that he didn't really do anything, and then added that 4 people died in that battle. The young man still thinks that if he had been better then, everything would have gone without losses. Someone in the guild shouted that the guy should be proud. The man added that he was just a runt who had some magic. When people told him they wanted to be better than everyone else, he asked them to hit him at least once. It was Sergeant Vogt. The man said he saw the fight, and for a weakling the guy fought more than well. It was a great fight. Everyone who survived should be proud, even those who died in that fight. The sergeant said that people were indeed dying. It was not the best result, but still, it was the best possible outcome of the battle, and everyone fought with the utmost determination. Masaru's efforts were not in vain either. It was for this reason that the sergeant urged the boy to be proud of himself. It would be the highest expression of respect for the dead on his part. The boy could not hold back his tears. The sergeant then added that the desire to save everyone and become stronger was a great motivation, but apparently his skills had dulled because he hadn't shown up in the guild for a long time. Vogt said he could see it in the boy's dragging legs. He then told Masaru to go back to training camp, and he would retrain him and get him in shape. The guy who met him patted Masaru on the shoulder again and told him to come back alive. Masaru said that even if he got hurt, he could heal himself with magic. Because of this, the boy had to go through the same painful experience over and over again, so the training was super tiring. Angela poked Masaru's cheek and said that he was all hers now. Afterwards, the girl asked about what would happen when Elizabeth returned. Having completed the mission of escorting the pioneer village in the Demonlands, would he reciprocate her feelings? Masaru asked if that would be okay with Angela. The girl thought for a moment and then replied that if she said she wasn't jealous, she would probably be lying. Meanwhile, at the border defense base in the Gorbas fortress, guards noticed people approaching the gates. They clearly needed help. While the knights were helping, they began to learn what had happened to them. One of the men said that the pioneers' frontier village had been destroyed. While they were still questioning, trying to find out how many people had suffered from the pioneer village, enemies began to approach the fortress. Someone shouted that it was a wyvern. The monster was rapidly approaching the city walls, and the knights had already opened return fire with scorpions. The wyvern was still able to approach the walls and grab several people. Masaru and Sati were riding in a carriage. The girl turned to her master and asked if Elizabeth was really safe. Masaru clasped his hands and decided to calm Sati down, saying that she was definitely fine. Their journey began with that the guild master announced that they received an urgent request from the fortress of Gorbus. The man picked up the tablet and said that a few days ago, the pioneer village, built as a strategic point to capture the demon's territory, was destroyed by attacking monsters. The number and types of monsters were unknown, but the appearance of a large dragon was confirmed. A horde of monsters was located on the border of the Lesser Kingdom with the demon lands. Now this horde has begun to attack Gorbus. The royal army has already been sent there from the capital as reinforcements, but they, the adventurers of Shiori, are closer to the fortress, so they will also defend this fortress until the arrival of the royal army. The guild master said that this was an emergency for their country. With that, he wished everyone good luck, and Masaru thought that if only everything would be okay with Elizabeth. Sati twitched her ear and said that she heard some screams, but they were still far away. Perhaps these were people trying to escape from the Gorbus fortress. Masaru asked if the girl could find out through the hawk's vision. She said she would try, and then heard a clear, "Save us." It was indeed a group of knights from there. Several civets chased a group of survivors along the road, trying to grab them with their paws. There were very few survivors. The sergeant grabbed his sword, shouting that Wyvern could hear him. He assumed that they were flying from the direction of Gorbus fortress. The man laid the first blow on Sati and Masaru. Sati tried to shoot, but a powerful gust of wind caused by the wings immediately turned the arrow around. The wyvern pounced on the cart, breaking it in half. Masaru was about to draw his sword, but the sergeant made a sign with his hand. He told the boy to better heal the fugitives, and he would take care of the beast himself. The sergeant grabbed his blade, which crunched slightly in its sheath, and then with an instant jerk dodged the flying creature. He struck the monster in the neck, decapitating it. The second wyvern decided to attack from behind, but Watchk was alert and landed a few quick blows, splitting the beast's head. Someone asked if the boy knew the sergeant's story. One of the soldiers said that he was retired now because of his right leg, but before that he was either the second or third best swordsman in the world. Masaru smiled, saying that he was glad to hear that. If the sergeant's strength had remained normal, the knight would have long since lost confidence in himself as an adventurer. Vote, meanwhile, landed on the ground, having finished off the wyverns. They arrived at Gorbus, and the sergeant immediately began giving orders. Masaru asked if he could first check if everything was okay with his girlfriend, who was on an escort mission. Vote said that they should go to the local guild then, because they should have information on everyone who came here as an escort. The sergeant promised to ask, and Masaru thanked him. The sergeant came in first and asked about Elizabeth. They were given the address where the girl was currently located. Masaru and Sati went there immediately, and when they arrived, they knocked on the right room. From there they heard crying, so they opened it themselves and saw the body of a girl, and next to her crying friend. Her friend blamed herself, saying that it was all because of her. For Masaru, it was sudden, and at first he couldn't believe it. If only he had come earlier, he didn't even have time to tell about his feelings. Masaru spoke softly, asking how Elizabeth could die here like this. The girl opened her eyes and smiled, saying that she was, in fact, still alive. Masaru was speechless and then felt a great sense of shame. Eli apologized and said that she had been using magic for 3 days and 3 nights, so she was so tired that she went to bed. Nania continued to cry, and then Elizabeth sat up from the bed and said that Masaru seemed good at healing. She wanted him to come with her and examine him. Eli knocked on the door, calling Orba. The girl said that Masaru had just arrived and wanted to patch him up with his healing magic. She opened the door slightly, and Orba asked the boys not to be shy. Obra smiled and said that Masaru was the boy Eli always spoke of with a happy expression, which made the boy a little embarrassed. When they entered the room, they were immediately horrified. Orba apologized for greeting his guests sitting on the bed. He began asking about how long the journey had been and whether there had been any incidents along the way. Masaru said that they were attacked by 3 wyverns, but the sergeant quickly dealt with them alone. Afterwards, the guy said that he would heal Orba. The man smiled and said that the guy was a big help, because the healers from the fortress were currently up to their ears in work. Masaru used his magic, after which Orba began to remove the bandages. The man noticed that the boy was really good, because there was no trace of the scars left. Afterwards, Masaru looked at the leg and said that he was going to use extra healing to treat the leg. The guy put his hands on it, but nothing happened. The guy said that he would try again. Orba stopped him, saying that everything was fine and the wounds had closed. The man noted that if the guy uses healing magic, he should know that it will not return blood, physical strength, and limbs, among other things. The man said that this was just the inevitable outcome of the disaster he had brought upon himself. Nania screamed that it was not true. Tears came to her eyes and she said that when they retreated she had let her guard down. It was then that Orba protected her, but lost his leg. The man smiled and said that this was the consequence of his choice, and besides, her life was much more valuable than what he gave. Orba said he wanted to work on a farm when he retired. He had saved up some money and he could always use his prosthetic, but retirement came sooner than he expected. Still, life without fighting was not bad either. Elizabeth said that the Battle Axe of Dawn had broken up. One of the guys in the room said that they were currently deciding who would take over as leader. He himself would return home with Orba, as they had been friends since childhood. The second orb comrade said that he dreams of becoming a healer. As a child, he was told that he lacked magical abilities, but Elizabeth helped him a little. His magic is small, but he wants to use even this opportunity. Masaru said that in the end, everyone will go their own way. One of the guys smiled and said that their cherished dreams are more important than keeping the team together. After the hospital, Masaru went to the city's temple, where he informed Bishop Franco of his arrival. The man said that they needed good healers to reinforce them. Masaru was worried about Sati. Although she was with Sergeant Vogt, they were guarding the city walls. Franco began to tell that a few days ago, wounded people arrived here after the destruction of the village. The man said that about half of all the adventurers and temple knights were killed. Masaru asked about the Vajra squad. Franco replied that Captain Tijan was not injured, but almost all the other members of the squad were killed. The bishop said that the captain must have had a very hard time, since he had to retreat instead of saving his comrades. But he showed no sadness, gathered the remaining knights, and reorganized the squad. Soon, they entered one of the rooms where there were many seriously injured people. The clerics tried to heal them, but with the continuous attacks of monsters, the number of injured people increases every day. Masaru said that he wanted to start healing right away because he was eager to try the healing area spell. Franco was surprised that the guy had a high-level ability. Masaru wasn't 100% confident because he had only recently learned it. The bishop said he could use the skill too, so he would help if necessary. Masaru began to heal. People began to stir and come to their senses gradually. Many noted that they were feeling much better and that their wounds were disappearing. They began to bow to Franco, thanking him for healing. The man was a little confused, initially not understanding why everyone was thanking him. He saw that Masaru was hiding behind him, and then he himself turned to the fighters and inspired them. The boy thanked Franco, saying that he didn't really like being the center of attention. The bishop instructed the priests to continue the treatment, and then continued talking to the boy. Franco smiled and said that it was unusual that the guy didn't like being the center of attention, since he was an adventurer. Masaru said that he became one in passing, and then took out his mask, asking if he could heal while wearing it. He also added that he would like to be dressed as a priest in order to preserve his identity as an incognito. Franco took his hand and asked if Masaru could leave him an autograph later. The bishop said that the boy was too modest. He then told me that he had heard a story about a mysterious priest in the city of Siori who wiped away all pain with his powerful and boundless magic. Masaru realized that this legend had grown too big. Bishop Franco added that for them, for the healers, the boy was a real hero. Masaru replied that it was true, but that was no reason to deify him. Soon one of the priests ran inside and shouted to the bishop about the appearance of new wounded. Franco immediately called out to Masaru and they both began to treat the warriors. So day after day passed. Masaru crossed off the days until the arrival of the royal army and 4 days remained to hold out. Sati also fought for the fortress all this time. They met to have a meal together in the temple refectory. Masaru asked about how the girl was doing in battle. She said that with the cheat her movements became much better. Bishop Franco came to their table and asked if he could join them. Masaru pointed to the man and introduced him to Sati. The girl immediately thanked Franco for the food and the reception. The man laughed and said that Masaru thought the rumors about him were exaggerated, but the guy actually had outstanding abilities. Masaru said that there were times when even he felt his limits. A few days ago, he had been unable to help a comrade who had lost his leg. He wished he could do more. The bishop froze at that moment. Franco asked the boys not to divulge what he was going to say next, but since Masaru is a great magician, he couldn't help but share. The bishop said that there is the greatest magic in this world that can even restore limbs. Franco said that there once lived a great magician healer. He was a priest and saw the seriously wounded every day, until one day he thought about whether he could return their lost body to them. He was like Masaru. This sacred one possessed incredible talent and great magical power, thanks to which he was able to achieve such heights in healing magic, unknown to others. He was able to create a spell that could restore lost body parts. Many of those who had already said goodbye to them again looked to find their loss. The rumor began to spread quickly. The crippled from almost the entire kingdom began to come to him, filled with dreams of healing. But then, not even a month had passed before this priest died. As it turns out, this spell shortens the life of the one who uses it. After learning this, the temple's abbots banned her and sealed her away forever. Franco said that Masaru's progress is very similar to this legend. Franco said that the boy could reach the same forbidden heights. He asked the boy not to use it if he mastered the spell, and it would be better for him to forget about this conversation as soon as possible. Even though the spell consumed the life of the mediator, the flow of people seeking healing never dried up. Masaru must not follow in the footsteps of that priest. Afterwards, they went home to their dorm. Masaru said goodbye to Sati and opened the panel where he began to search for this great healing magic. He knew that he wanted to get closer to it. He wasn't going to overdo it either, but thanks to the cheat he could achieve the impossible. But at the same time he began to wonder if he could refuse Orba or, for example, if he asked Elizabeth. As soon as he got up, he saw her right away. The girl said that she ran out of mana and was on a break. Although she was on the front lines, they were protecting only her. Now another mage had replaced her. Masaru said that he helped with healing at the temple and it was quiet there now, so he was also taking a break, and Sati had returned to defend the walls. Afterwards, he wanted to ask Elizabeth something else. Masaru wanted to know if Elizabeth could save someone dear to her at the cost of her life. He wondered what she would do. The girl put a mug on the table and said that the question was stupid. The girl said that self-sacrifice is just a beautiful excuse for the saved person who stayed alive at the cost of someone else's life. It is the same loss, and Masaru should not sacrifice himself. Elizabeth said that she would not allow anyone to say that no one would be sad if Masaru was gone. The boy cheered up and thanked her. When she was around, all his worries immediately disappeared. When evening came, they went out into the city and met Angela. Masaru happily said that the priests of Shiori also came to the rescue. Angela said that she really wanted to go to the temple. But first, she had to do something. She walked up to Elizabeth and hugged the girl. Angela said that she was very worried when she heard about the destruction of the village and was glad that Eli was alive. Elizabeth began to smile, saying that such a beautiful airbender like her would not die so easily. Angela began to squeeze Eli tighter, after which she said that she had more to tell. Angela revealed that she and Masaru had started dating. Eli got angry, saying that before she left, she had asked Angela for a fair competition. Masaru started to apologize, but Eli said that they would first have to win the battle with the monsters, and then they could resolve everything. Angela said that this was also their private conversation, so it would be better to do it alone. Masaru smiled and agreed. Soon, they heard loud sounds coming from the walls. Everyone immediately became alert, trying to figure out the cause. At this time, a sudden attack began on the wall. The captain gave the order for the entire squad to retreat to the second wall. The battering ram broke through the wall and hordes of monsters rushed to attack. Angela quickly rushed into the temple, and the remaining three immediately rushed to the city walls. They showed the guards their adventurer cards and were let through first. They immediately found the sergeant and reported their arrival. Vogt said that the first wall was destroyed by the earth dragon. The monsters were coming in a large stream. Now they had to leave him or the second wall would fall too. Eli asked about the power they had at their disposal. Vogt said that in his opinion, even a dragon would be difficult for them. Suddenly, several people appeared nearby who called themselves S-rank adventurers. Vogt did not show much enthusiasm and immediately turned to them. He noted that his request had arrived in time. He recognized the leader Garcia and asked if they could defeat the Earth Dragon. Garcia nodded. The guards were very tense when they learned that the adventurers would take on such a monster with only 3 of them. Garcia said that every second counted and asked for help from the mages and defense units. Everyone immediately got ready. The main task was to clear the way for the strike force. The commander gave the signal, and the mages immediately began to incinerate the monsters near the wall. Explosions began to sound below. Monsters flew in different directions, and magical attacks reached the Earth Dragon. The dragon was not harmed, but the path to the main goal was clear. The main thing was to stop the dragon and save the last wall of the city. The commander shouted that the adventurers could act. Garcia gave the order to Teresa to lift him off the ground. The girl mage lifted the leader of the group with a large hammer, and after they flew over the dragon, she released him down. The girl threw her leader, and he struck the dragon's head with his hammer right on the forehead. A crunching sound was heard, as if the monster's skull was beginning to crack. With another equally crushing blow, the dragon was finished. Garcia climbed down from its head and wished the monster a peaceful sleep. His hammer was in the same condition as the dragon. Everyone was shocked by the strength of the heroes. Garcia turned to Teresa again, asking for a spare hammer. The man said that he had already entered into a state of courage, so he intended to arrange a massacre for the monsters here. While the three adventurers began to fight below, putting up a truly brutal battle, the monsters began to set up ladders and climb the walls. The Temple Knights also came to the rescue, having regained their strength. Captain Tijin called upon his army to dispel the regrets of their fallen comrades in the village. Masaru pressed himself against the wall, saying that they could handle the air attacks, but they had to do something about the ladders. The guy got an idea and started throwing rocks from his storage. Seeing this, Vote praised the guy and asked if he had any more stones. Masaru smiled and said that he had about 98 more in stock. Elizabeth's mouth dropped open in surprise. Then the sergeant decided to hand the guy over to the commander of the defensive detachment, Hakim. The man smiled and said that he was glad to meet you. They started to work together, and Hakim, as a good strategist, indicated the best drop points for the stones, and Masaru carried out his orders. They had a great tandem. Masaru asked Vote if there had been such a large-scale battle like the end of the world before. The sergeant said that he had seen something like that about 10 years ago. Elizabeth said that all this carelessness that had developed over the past 10 years had led to the tragedy in the pioneer village. The vanguard of the monsters could have been kicked away, but after that, things got really serious. No matter how long the peaceful times last, one must remember that monsters can easily tear people apart, and also that an enemy camp has been set up in the Demon Lands. The attack was repelled. A terrible battle that cost many lives. If this was the beginning of the end of the world, then Masaru had to decide whether he was saving this world or just running away. After the night battle ended, Lasura's army arrived in the city and the defense was strengthened. At the same time, countless monsters suddenly disappeared. Masaru went to Elizabeth, who was currently on guard duty. Masaru asked if there were any enemies in sight. Then he took something out of storage and said that he had once been hunting and made a cape out of a wild boar. He covered Elizabeth with it. Judging by the fact that the direction of the monsters' attack changed, they were attacking another principality, Hiragi's, which had already fallen. Reinforcements from the Empire did not have time to arrive, and the capital fell. It seemed like the monsters had a command system like an army. It looked like the attack on Gorbus was just a feint to attack Hiragi's. Among the orcs and goblins, there are those called kings. They command groups. If we accept the possibility that the demons also have one, the wisest one, about whom legends are composed, the king of demons. Anyway, it's all a rumor. They have protected the fortress, and soon the guild will lift the emergency status. They will go back. Now Nania and Orba invite Eli to their homeland. Elizabeth clung to Masaru and said that she would continue to work with him as an adventurer. Masaru smiled and said that he had no right to refuse her. The girl agreed. Elizabeth turned to Masaru and asked if he loved her. Masaru blushed, then said that even if he did, she should let him confess first. Masaru turned around and said that he really loved Elizabeth. The girl blushed and the boy noticed this, also starting to feel embarrassed. She said that it was just because of the dawn. Soon they returned and told Angela and Sati everything. The girls were happy, but Masaru was eaten up with guilt because there was no polygamy in his past world. Now he had to tell Nania everything. Elizabeth said it wouldn't be that easy, and they had to convince her first. When they arrived at the hospital, they immediately attracted more attention. Elizabeth sat down opposite Nania. Elizabeth told her everything. Nania said that she understood her perfectly, but was still a little surprised that Eli was able to find her destiny. She was happy for her, but it meant that Nina had to leave the knight's service. Eli said that Nania was still going with Orba, so she would continue her journey with Masaru. Nania said abruptly that she had not yet made a final decision about going with Orba. Eli said that Nania loved Orba, to which the knight agreed and the axe leader calmed down. But then Nania said that if she was gone, who would take care of Eli's protection? The mage pointed to Masaru. Nania said that Elizabeth was rejecting her because the girl was weak. Eli clenched her fist, saying that she didn't mean it that way. Nania stood her ground. She stood up and said that in that case, they would have a duel. Nania wouldn't let a weakling protect Eli. If she won against Masaru, Elizabeth would throw the idea out of her head. Elizabeth immediately shouted that it would be as Nania wished. Everyone watched what was happening in surprise. After Elizabeth apologized to Masaru about the situation, saying that the situation had become much more complicated, Orba said that Nania was still hesitating about whether she should go with him. Eli said that Nania is sure that she will be better off with Orba, she just can't decide. Elizabeth and Nania get along well because they first met about 10 years ago. They have been together since childhood and have already become like one family to each other. The duel was to take place the next day. People gathered in the stands and Masaru did not understand why there were so many people. Eli said that everyone was tired of fighting and wanted a spectacle. Angela asked Masaru what his chances were. The guy answered that the fight would definitely be tough, but he and Orba came up with a strategy in a hurry. Elizabeth said that Nania was about a B rank, like her. Masaru was only a D rank. The girl apologized that it all turned into a duel because of her. Masaru said that before he came to Shiori, he was just wasting his life. Now he realizes that he has to work hard because he already has something in this world. Previously, he ran away from the fear of changing something, but now he wants to take his fate into his own hands. Now there is something that he is not ready to lose for anything. Sergeant Votes said that he will be the judge of the duel. This was Masaru's first duel, so the boy was so nervous that he even forgot to check his armor. He needed a few minutes. The sergeant shouted at the boy to act faster. People started laughing from the stands, and Nania was only once again convinced that Masaru was not a serious protector for her Eli. The people from the stands wished the participants good luck. Masaru was already ready and stood opposite Nania. The sergeant put his hand between them and soon announced the start of the duel. The duel allowed the use of minor attack magic and healing magic. Masaru began the duel by launching the air hammer he learned from Elizabeth. Nania easily parried the blow. Masaru was amazed because the equipment was invisible. The girl said that such things are easy to track by the dust and air currents before the blow. Nania had learned this in training with fellow air mages. Masaru decided that if he attacked with several of them at once, at least one would definitely hit. Nania was able to block all the airstrikes and then quickly closed the distance between her and Masaru. She hit the guy with a blade, but Masaru managed to block it. It was really hard for him and he couldn't believe that these were just one-handed sword strikes. Nania was also very fast, which was also surprising. Masaru knew that his strength was starting to run out. On top of that, the girl was covering not only herself with a shield, but also her sword. Masaru couldn't see the direction of her attack and she was finally able to get it out. After Nania had wounded the boy, she began to deliver a barrage of heady blows that immediately knocked the weakened boy down. Masaru was on his back, but continued to defend himself. As Nania approached, the boy seldom kicked her shield, knocking the knight back. This gave him some time to get up and use healing magic. Many did not understand the reason why the girl did not attack the healing enemy. Nania herself began to suspect something, paying attention to Masaru's legs. She noticed that the guy seemed to be swaying, although he was not a newbie. It also did not look like his leg was injured, but he was dragging his right lower limb. She knew that something was hidden there. Masaru understood that she suspected something, but even if the enemy sensed something was wrong, the ace in the hole could still be used to push the enemy back. The young man went on the attack, realizing that he needed to improve the momentum to transfer his weight to his right leg. Nania believed that she could crush the boy with her onslaught. Crossing swords, Masaru suddenly began to act more decisively, relying on his signature move, which was still ahead. Now he put all his efforts into it. When they were working on their tactics together, Orba offered him a strategy for a protracted battle. Levin told him how to counter the shield, and Tux told him about the sword. Elizabeth herself told him about the ace in the hole. During his preparation, the boy pretended to be overly excited and charged the plate on his heel with lightning magic. Such magic is not lethal, but it can immobilize the enemy. Masaru said that the girl, while traveling with Elizabeth, protected her robe and shield from lightning, but there is no such protection on her legs. Then he knocked the sword out of Nania's hands and threw it aside. Nania yelled at Masaru to stop getting cocky and punched him in the face. The girl said that she didn't care about the sword and shield because they were just tools, and she was a proud knight and was fighting for what she had to protect. She shouted that she would never lose to someone like Masaru. Due to her emotions, she again let down her guard and Masaru struck back, shocking everyone. Nania fell and her whole body was shaking. At the same time, the girl refused to accept her defeat. Masaru began to approach her closer, raising his sword up. He leaned him over the girl and said that he also had a person whom he was going to protect with all his might. Nania began to cry and then collapsed to the ground, losing her last strength. The sergeant pointed at Masaru and shouted that the boy was the winner. Masaru waited for the verdict, after which he also began to stagger violently on his feet. His body rushed rapidly down to the ground and he immediately fell flat next to Nania. After the fight, Elizabeth shouted Masaru's name and quickly ran to him. She shouted to Angela to take care of Masaru. The girl adjusted her headdress and agreed. Suddenly, Elizabeth tripped and fell. She clenched her fists and thought of Nanya. No one could guess what was in Eli's heart. Elizabeth remembered the moments she spent with Nanya, how she read to her before bed or how they ate together. Even the saddest and most sorrowful moments, she remembered all of it at that moment. Elizabeth gritted her teeth as she remembered Nanya saying that she would always be on her side. The girl stood up and ran screaming, calling for the girl. Nanya, who was lying on the ground covered in blood, twitched her finger. In the distant past, little Elizabeth was crying loudly. Nanya knelt down and begged Mrs. Elizabeth not to cry. The girl squeezed the hem of her skirt and said that all those people at the reception mockingly called Nanya a dirty aristocrat. Nanya replied that by defending her, the lady was putting the Blonza household in an awkward position. She asked Elizabeth not to worry about her. Elizabeth said that this would never happen. When a friend is hurt, it is of course very sad. Nanya was very touched. Elizabeth is a kind girl, but one day she will have to face the disgusting world of nobles. And despite this, Nanya will protect her so that Elia will remain the same kind girl. For this, she had to become stronger, much stronger, to be able to protect Elizabeth. And now she didn't understand who had made Eli cry. She would not forgive such a person. Suddenly, Nanya starts to open her eyes and sees Elizabeth in front of her, crying because of her. Nanya was very surprised. She apologized to her. Elizabeth tearfully argued with Nanya whether she was really making fun of her. Nanya said that she swore to protect Elizabeth, so that her smile would never fade, so that she would always remain herself. However, she herself prevented this. Elizabeth shouted that nothing of the sort, and the girl always protected her, but nevertheless, she wanted the girl to be happy, but she took and tied her to herself with this knightly oath. Nanya smiled and said that it was not so. When she arrived at the house of Blonza, all those envious nobles were against her pride, but she followed the path of a knight, as her father asked her. Suddenly, Elizabeth became her guide on this path. She wants to protect Eli. This desire filled the void in her heart, and she became proud to be a knight. However, she began to cling to it so much that she tied Elizabeth to herself. Elizabeth was frightened when Nanya stood up. Suddenly, Nanya knelt down and said that she was resigning her duties as Elizabeth Blanca's knight from today onwards. She also wants the girl to be happy. They will go their separate ways from now on, but the girl will always be her friend. She asks Elizabeth if they agree to be her family. Suddenly, Elizabeth grabs Nanya and says that it is, of course. She thanks Nanya for everything. At this time, Angelica asks how Masaru's wounds are and if they are getting better. The young man agrees and says that the girl saved him. Masaru then approaches Nanya and Elizabeth, who ask the girl to knock out a healing potion. Suddenly, Nanya says that the boy's strength is in his will. He can definitely protect Elizabeth. It's ridiculous to ask for such a thing after a duel, but she asks him to take care of Elizabeth. The young man agrees. Suddenly, everyone started clapping. The men in the stands were shouting that the fight was very good and that Masaru and Nanya were great. At this time, he used healing on Nanya and was very surprised because in the heat of battle, he forgot that they were being watched. The men said that Masaru and Nanya were very strong warriors. The girl, of course, but it was nice to watch the boy too. Another man asked if he was the one they called the Rabbit Hunter. Another man said he had advanced dramatically and was now a dragon slayer. He is good with a sword, but have they seen how fast he can prepare magic, and he can also heal. In a recent battle, they saw him throw stones, and at the horse ranch they saw a huge pillar of fire. No one understood what kind of magic it was. Angelica asked Masaru, and he ran, covering his face with his hands and shouting that he doesn't like being the center of attention. People were surprised when Masaru ran past them. Nanya told Elizabeth that Masaru was a very funny boy. Elizabeth agreed with her. Although he is usually a weakling, when necessary, he pulls himself together. This is a very cool trait of his. The young man tried to run away, but Angelica was chasing him. At this time, in front of the southern gate of the city of Shiori, travelers with large backpacks approached the city. The guard asked them for a pass. After the man showed the paper, the guard saluted and asked to forgive his manners. He wished the arrivals a pleasant time. The stern man was Clemens Ogren, a servant of truth of the first rank. The man asked if Tillich was in this city. The action then begins in the city of Shiori, in Masaru's house. Masaru and Elizabeth were very close that night. The young man asked the girl how she feels and if it hurt a lot. Elizabeth says that it certainly hurt. She doesn't understand why girls only have to suffer. It's very unfair. Masaru replied that that's why he said it would be better to use healing magic. Elizabeth said that the first time she and Angela hadn't used healing magic. Elizabeth wanted the pain to be an important memory for her. She wanted to remember her first time, too. Besides, even though it was painful, she was happy that they now had such a relationship. Masaru was very embarrassed. He immediately went to hug the girl. Then Elizabeth asked the young man if he wanted to hear about her family. The young man agreed. Elizabeth began to explain that her father was entrusted with a fortress on the border between the Gali Empire and the Demon Lands. He was a very influential nobleman. Then a soldier of the empire came with a report that monsters had attacked the city in his possession. The father gave his fortress to the army of the empire, and he himself headed to the scene with his army. However, there was no trace of the monsters. Instead, the monsters had attacked the fortress. The troops that had been left to defend it had disappeared somewhere. And then his and Nania's fathers gave their lives defending the fortress. They, the House of Blanza, were forced to admit that they were responsible for the loss of the fortress. They were able to escape the death penalty, but they were demoted from counts to barons and deprived of almost all their lands. The recapture of the fortress required a huge effort and many people, and the main link in the strategy for its recapture was Raoul Hexen, that is, the pig count and his personal army. Masaru asked if he had heard correctly about the pig count. Elizabeth said that her father thought a little differently than the empire. The Gali Empire has a history of discrimination against other races, elves, beastmen, and dwarves. Father couldn't stand it. He believed that they had the same rights as everyone else. He gave them good jobs regardless of race or background. She respected her father, and the fact that they were sitting at the table with the servants who worked in the mansion. He was not treated differently from his family members, but there were nobles with very long pedigrees who found this unacceptable and had a vested interest in their wealth. Raoul was one of them. He was known as a terrible racist. He even specially bought servants from among the beastmen he hated and beat them in his mansion. He had conflicts with Elizabeth's father. Immediately after her father died defending the fortress, Raoul's troops, who just happened to be nearby, began an operation to return her. Masaru said it was a coincidence, and Elizabeth replied that it was the exact opposite. It was this pig of a count who had deceived her father. She begged her brother, who had become the successor, to turn to the servants of truth for an investigation, but there was no record left of the soldier who brought news to their father of the monster attack. And almost no one has ever laid eyes on these warriors. The power of the servants of truth is capable of upsetting the political balance, and therefore they work carefully and will not take on a case in which there is no evidence. The truth remains undisclosed, but she is determined to take revenge on that pig of a count. Masaru asks about revenge. Elizabeth interrupts him and says that she does not know what her revenge will be, but if she comes to the point of trying to kill someone, then the boy must stop her. She thinks that thanks to the boy she will be able to refuse it. Masaru looked at the girl and made a promise. Elizabeth smiled and asked if the boy could please stop staring at her so intently, since it still embarrassed her. Masaru said that it was not like he saw anything. As soon as the girl turned around, a blindingly bright light began to shine through the window. The girl asked what the young man was talking about. After a while, they get dressed and Elizabeth asks where Sati is by the way. Masaru replies that she went shopping with Angela. Elizabeth says that it is very good, otherwise she would burn with shame if the girl heard their voices. Masaru says that it is for sure because he does not want Sati to feel awkward. The girl then turns to Masaru and asks if the boy sees her as a girl. Masaru is surprised and says that she is a girl, not a boy. Elizabeth replies that she meant to say that the girl is not a slave to him at all. It is not uncommon for noblemen to consider servants as little more than furniture or objects, and not at all as people to be valued. However, he cares for Sati as a girl and probably Sati feels it too. Elizabeth asks what the young man thinks about the girl. Masaru thought about it and said that she is important to him, like they are family. Elizabeth asks if Sachi could be like a little sister to him or if he thinks she is very close to him, like a partner. Masaru says that he thinks he loves her. The girl uses lightning on him and demands him to say it loud and clear. Masaru says he loves her. He has constantly asked himself if it is just a desire to protect her, and even though polygamy is not frowned upon here, he wonders if it is not promiscuity to rush from one girl to another. Elizabeth replies that she can't deny that from one to the other it's really so-so. Masaru replies that he feels the same way. The girl smiles and asks him to imagine that there are two rabbits in front of him. One would be enough for him, but having given in to the desire to catch both, most people do not understand either one. However, the young man is not one of them. He is a rabbit hunter. The young man tried his best and managed to catch a lot of rabbits. If you work half-heartedly, you will not catch a single one. So if a young man tries, he must put in his all. Although they are not as simple as rabbits. Masaru replies that he understands. The girl smiles and says that this is great. She asks the boy to convey his feelings to Sati properly when she returns. Elizabeth thinks that since Sati is with Angela, everything should be fine for them now. At this point, Sati apologized to Angela for having to help her with her shopping. Angela said that she had tagged along with the girl herself. Angela asks Sati if she is shopping for such an important day. Sati says that today is a very important day for Masaru and Elizabeth, so she wanted to cook something delicious. Angela asks Sati if she wanted to spend a special day with someone. The girl says that for someone like her, it is impossible. Angela continues and adds that she just thought the girl was in love with Masaru. Sati started to panic and say that it was not like that at all, and then asked how the girl understood that. Angela asked Sati to calm down, otherwise she would deny and agree at the same time. Sati replied that she simply respected Masaru. Besides, it is unacceptable for a servant to fall in love with his master. Angela said that there are even marriages between a servant and a master. And Masaru doesn't consider her a servant at all. Sati asked who she was then. Angela added that she was an ordinary girl. Sati has become an adventurer, does housework and tries her best for her beloved. She is a wonderful girl. Sati starts to deny and says that she is a servant, so she cannot love a person. Angela hugs her and says that a girl can be happy. Sati says she is scared. He is happier than ever, and she is scared that it will end, but being rejected by the man she loves is even scarier. It seems to her that the happier she is, the more she will cease to be herself. Masaru told Angela about Sati's childhood. Her parents didn't love her, no one needed her, she was alone for so long that she probably got used to being alone to protect herself. Angela answered Sati that they would never change. There was nothing wrong with being loved, she would just be filled with tenderness. Sari burst into tears and told Angela that she loved Masaru very much. After a while, they return. Masaru greets Sati. He apologizes for coming so soon and then tells the girl to put the bag somewhere because he would like to take Sati somewhere. After some time, they come to the Broil company, which sells servants. Sati, in a panic, begins to ask if Masaru really returns him. Masaru says that it is the other way around. He takes her to an employee. The slave mark that binds him to his master can be removed. The main thing is to pay. He wants Sati to stay with him, but not as a servant. Then, a man approaches them and congratulates Sati. The servant's shop is often a dead end in life, a gathering place for those no longer needed by anyone. However, if they are lucky enough to become important to someone again, servants can start a new life. Selma was the first of these. He was so surprised when he learned that his sight had returned. For a moment he even wondered if it was she when he saw her, full of confidence. He makes the girl live for herself, not for serving someone. He says goodbye to Sati forever. He tells the girl not to come back here again. The girl agrees. The young man extends his hand and calls Sati with him as he wants to show her something. Since the girl is no longer a servant, he is ready to say it. Sati said that she also wants to say something. After some time, Elizabeth happily announced that Masaru was now dating Sati. It was nothing unusual for Masaru to have 2 lovers, but 3 would be a bit difficult. Elizabeth asks if he can handle it. The boy says he can handle it. Sati adds that it is enough for her that he can be near her. Masaru tells the girl not to worry because he will take care of her. Elizabeth says that Sati is incredibly sweet and there is no sweeter one. Elizabeth says that they have a group of 3 people now, so they need to find a job quickly to warm up. So they come to the Adventurers Guild. Masaru says that Angela wants to join their group too, so someday there will be 4 of them. Elizabeth said that was good. A healer would never be redundant, and the only thing they needed to be completely happy was someone with a shield in the vanguard. Suddenly, Masaru notices a crowd. The man says that one should not forget about one's duty. The girl says that this is why she does not want to decide for herself. The man replied that the Temple of Truth was already tired of her long and unchanging answers. The girl's name was Tilika. Suddenly, Tilika saw a familiar face in the crowd. The girl quickly approached Masaru and grabbed him. She shouted that she would marry Masaru. Tilika said again that she would marry Masaru. The young man, Elizabeth and Sati were very surprised. The man looked at the young man with disdain. The man says that the girl really wants to say that she is not satisfied with the groom they have chosen. Talika replied that her fiancé only wanted her title as a servant of truth. Masaru apologized for interrupting them and then asked what they were talking about. The man replied that they had raised the issue of Talika's marriage. Dreven added that that was why Clemens Ogren, a servant of truth of the first rank, had come to them in Sayori to convey the will of the Temple of Truth. Masaru asked about marriage because Talika is younger than Sati and isn't it too early for her? The girl answered that she is 20 years old now. Masaru's group was very surprised. Masaru asked if it was true. The man replied that because her left eye contained magic, Talika's growth was greatly slowed down. Masaru realized that, in a word, it was a fantasy. Sati was surprised that Talika was a senpai. Talika said that she didn't mind if things were as they were before. The man said that the eyes of the servants of truth are able to expose lies, and that is their excessive use for politics. Therefore, it is the duty of every servant of truth to leave behind a successor suitable for these eyes. To do this, it is imperative to have a child with a partner who possesses strong magic. So the groom they chose was George Byron, the third son of a noble family who excelled in both magic and swordsmanship, and was very interested in Tillich. He then turns to Masaru and asks what adventurer rank he is at least. The man replies that he is currently a C rank, but they are thinking of raising it. He has extraordinary magical abilities. The man replied that they were not interested in mediocre adventurers. Does Talika have any proof that he is in any way superior to the son of the House of Byron? Talika hesitates a bit. Masaru looks and tells everyone to wait. He says the man is right and he has no outstanding achievements and nobility. However, will it be okay for him to show his abilities and his power as a magician? The man asks if he can. Masaru says that if the man gives him time, he will show everything. The man uses his eye magic to look at the boy. The man says that he sees that the boy is not lying. He turns around and says he's giving the boy a month. That's when George Byron will arrive to take Tillich. That's when he'll have to show his strength. The young man presses his lips together and then turns to Elizabeth, Sati, and Talika. He asks them to call Angela and come back to his house because he has something to talk about with them. After a while, the young man explains something to them. The girls are surprised. Elizabeth says she understands. The young man gets this ability, called cheat, in the employment service. Masaru replies that in his country's language, cheat means unfair play. Elizabeth says that it is unfair indeed. The boy's ability to learn magic so quickly cannot be explained by talent alone. Sati asks that the boy needs to accumulate a certain amount of skill points to cheat. Masaru agrees. Sati says that means cheating is a reward from the gods for those who tried their best. Elizabeth says that Sati shines too brightly, and Masaru says that Sati is so good that she even glows. Angela asks if Masaru is really an apostle. Elizabeth asks the girl about the apostle. Angela says that an apostle is a messenger of the gods who sometimes descend to earth to help people. Before she went to Gorbis, Abbot Roberto spoke to her about whether Masaru was an apostle. The young man says that Ito, whom he met and hello work, didn't tell her anything except that he could use the cheat as he wished. All he mentioned about himself was that he was the ruler of this world and something like a god. Elizabeth, speaking about Ito, asks if the young man really was talking about the main deity, Itusuru. Angela adds that he is in charge of all the other gods. If it is him, then Masaru really is an apostle. The young man says that he can't say anything, he was just an ordinary worker then. However, now with the help of this cheat, he will be able to show the power of his magic. He tells Talika that it doesn't matter whether she marries him or not, but at least they can convince the Temple of Truth to acknowledge him, at least for a while. Sati then asks Talika if she loves Masaru. The girl is embarrassed and answers that she loves him. Everyone is surprised. Then Talika adds that she loves him like Katsu from the dragon. Elizabeth replies that it's a start. Angela adds that even if it's not the best solution to the problem, she should at least decide for herself who she marries. Masaru says that then, from tomorrow, they will all start earning skill points. In fact, Elizabeth and Angela, like Sati, are already under divine protection, although he does not yet know how it is given. Elizabeth is surprised and asks if she can learn any magic she wants. The boy answers that her skill points allow it for now. Angela says that she wants to become even stronger as a healer so she can help people. Masaru then notices Talika's indignation and asks her what is wrong. The girl replies that she thought about something after the boy's story. The main tasks of the Servants of Truth are to investigate crimes and punish criminals. Masaru thinks that it is like the police and the court at the same time. Talika continues and says that there are ulterior motives. She will tell him about it later. She thinks they can use it to convince Clemens. If Masaru got his power from the god Itosura, is there any reason other than testing this cheat that he got it? The young man is very tense because Talika used the magic of her eye. The young man gives a negative answer. The girl agrees with him. Masaru wasn't lying. The purpose of the cheat was just an experiment not to save the world. Still, he couldn't tell them that the world would be destroyed in less than 20 years. He doesn't know why this will happen or how to avoid it. Saying so will only make them worry. Now he wants to appreciate every minute spent together. After some time, Masaru and Sati were very close. The girl asked how the boy was feeling and if everything was going well. The boy said that the girl was doing well. Sati replied that she was very happy. Masaru then asks if the healing worked on the girl. Sati agrees. She says she loves healing magic. It has not only allowed her to see the light, but has also helped many people and brought them happiness. Also, healing magic is a reflection of Masaru's kindness. The young man smiled and said that the girl was exaggerating, but he thanked her. The boy then says that the girl addresses him formally, even though they have become a couple. Sati replies that her respect for the boy has not changed, because she is happy with the way things are. Masaru thinks that there are 20 years left until the end of the world. There is still time, at least there should be. The next day, Sati said that everything was ready. She looked at Talika and Angela, who were wearing new clothes. Sati said that it suited them very well. Masaru also added that the girls looked simply wonderful. Talika and Angela thanked the young man and woman for their compliments. Masaru asked Angela if she minded the mace, since it was quite heavy. Angela started waving it around and said that she was used to carrying babies, so it was fine. Masaru smiled and understood. Then Angela asked Masaru that he seemed to have forgotten something again. The young man became embarrassed and said Angela's shortened name, Anne. The girl smiled and agreed. The young man said that he called the girl that when they first met to tease her. Angela replied that they were a couple now, so she didn't mind. Elizabeth also said that it was time for the young man to get used to it and call her Eli. The young man agreed. Eli then turns to Tilak and asks her if it's okay that her duties have been taken over by Clemens. Tilak agrees and says that she wants to see the training with her own eyes to see if the boy is strong enough to be her partner. Elizabeth smiles and says that she thinks that hunting rabbits won't be enough here. At least 2 or 3 earth dragons will need to be defeated. Masaru asked not to ask for the impossible. Yesterday, Masaru and Talika came to the Adventurers Guild room. The man asked what they wanted to talk about. Talika thanked the teacher for coming. Tilak said that she wanted to discuss top-secret information, so she wanted to ask for a room. It seemed that Masaru was an exception that contradicted what was written in the third point of the special notes, so she wanted to ask him to take her place as the servant of truth in Shiori while she accompanied Masaru. The man was very surprised and, looking at the young man, asked if Talika really wanted to say that he was a hero. Masaru was very surprised when he was called a hero. Talika said that she would accompany the young man to verify this amazing fact. The man spoke about the third point of special notes. This is one of the hidden reasons for the existence of the Temple of Truth and one of the rules imposed on them. When faced with a situation that affects the currents of the world, a servant of truth must do everything possible to find a solution. Masaru asked Talika in a whisper about the currents of the world. Talika replied that it was all that happened in it. The man says that a minister of truth is forbidden to use his eye that exposes lies on other ministers. Lies are the cornerstone of human relationships, so without ministers any organization will collapse. However, he doesn't even need an eye to know that Talika is dead serious, because she is the type to just mention the third point of special notes. Masaru says that he is not a hero, he only managed to obtain the power from the god Ito to test it. The man stood up and said that like an apostle who had received divine protection, he now understood why the young man said that he would be able to improve his magical abilities. The man added that this was excellent. He accepted Talika's request. If the young man was truly a person who contradicted the third point, he would be able to prove it to him in a month, both as an apostle and as Talika's partner. A man leaves the Adventurers Guild and thinks about how apostles do not descend in times of peace. Talika knows this very well, and if he really is an apostle, then the world is on the brink of disaster. After some time, Talika and Masaru return home, where they are met by Angela, Elizabeth, and Sati. Tilak apologizes to the young man for dragging him into all this, although he had no need to get involved in the story of her marriage. The boy scratches the back of his head and says that it is a little embarrassing to talk about it, but the truth is, in his old world he had no friends. That's why he was so happy when they all spent the night together. It was so much fun just playing until late and chatting about this and that. So since the girl is in trouble, he wants to help her because they are friends. Tilak was surprised and then smiled and agreed that they are friends. Angela interrupted them and said that she thought it was time for her to return to the temple. The girl then turned to Masaru and said that she wanted them to tell the priest Roberto that they were living together. Masaru offered to tell him right away. Masaru leaves the house to Sati, and Tilika can make herself at home. Elizabeth smiles and says that she will try not to disturb Sati, but Masaru replied that the girl would do better to help her. Then they leave, and after a while they come to the temple. Masaru said that the priest was very excited to hear about the situation. Angela replied that he had been serving the gods for a long time, so it was natural that he was happy to meet the apostle. And he promised not to tell anyone, so the boy doesn't have to worry about making a fuss, because Masaru doesn't like to stand out. The boy smiled and thanked the girl. Angela then said that although his strength truly stands out, the boy learns magic extremely quickly and can even use area healing, which is something that few can do. Plus, the boy has an almost inexhaustible supply of mana. She doesn't insist that the boy start to deliberately show himself off, but he should be prepared for it since it is inevitable considering what the boy wants to do. When someone is in trouble, the boy simply cannot stay away. Masaru begins to scratch the back of his head lightly. The boy replies that if only there was a cheat that could rid him of his fear of being the center of attention. Angela giggles and replies that there definitely is. At that moment, the kids run up to them and ask them to play with them too. Angela apologizes and says that she needs to pack her things because she is moving to Masaru's brother's house. The children are surprised and then, looking at each other, they smile. They run away and say that they will ask Sister Matilda to play with them, and Masaru and Angela should get married soon. The girl laughed and told them not to joke like that. Then the girl turns to the boy and asks him to tell her if he would like to come to her for a while. The boy is surprised. After some time they come to Angela's modest room. The young man helps her pack her things, as the girl says that she was an orphan. She was put in a laundry basket and sent down a river in the middle of winter. It's a pretty horrible way to get rid of a child. She got stuck downstream somewhere and was picked up by a passing merchant. He brought her to the Shioli temple and left her there. The basket did not tip over, and she did not die from the cold and monsters. Even a merchant found her. Hearing such an incredible story, the priest Roberto probably decided that she was blessed by God. She was raised for the temple, then went to the capital to study at the church academy and become a priestess, and she did quite well there. That is why they talked about her staying to serve in the capital temple, but she decided to return and try to thank the god for his mercy, who directed her and this temple. Then the girl opened the chest and said that this was inside the basket. There was only one word. Maybe they couldn't write, or they just didn't have time. In any case, her parents were sympathetic enough to let whoever found her know her name. Someday she would like to meet them, wherever they are. But she has Roberto, who is like a father to her, other priests with whom she can discuss anything, and noisy but lovely children. She is never lonely. This place, the people in the temple, they are all Angela's real family. The next morning, the young man puts all of Angela's things into the inventory. After a while, Angela and Masaru stood at the entrance to the temple. Roberta wished Angela health and that she would continue to serve the gods. Matilda added that the girl should leave the temple to them. Angela thanked everyone. The children ran up to the girl and wished her well. Next time they were expecting presents and dragon meat. Angela said they would see how it went. And now she says that it is time for her to go. Angela and Masaru leave. Until the girl disappeared behind the temple gates, the children plowed after her. When Angela disappeared from their sight, they dropped their hands and began to sob. The temple attendants began to hug the children, and Matilda said that they held back very well. The children said that if they cried, Angela would leave feeling upset, so they decided they wouldn't cry. At that moment, while they were saying all these words, Angela was standing behind the stone wall and crying, pressing her hands to her chest. Masaru also felt very sad. Angela turned to Masaru, squeezing his hand, and said that she was very happy that she would be able to live with him, to be with him, but she asked him to at least let her cry now. A new life means parting with the old one and believing that the future will bring happiness. And now Masaru is responsible for the lives of others. After some time, Angela and Masaru return home. Masaru says that they are going as planned. They head north. Once they get used to the plains around Shiori, they head north to Gorba's fortress. Along the way, they encounter increasingly stronger monsters. Masaru asks the girls what their motto is. The girls unanimously say that they should try hard, but not overdo it. All 5 of them move towards something new, relying entirely on each other. After a while, the young man was collecting monster corpses into his inventory. Masaru told the girls that they were doing well. They had already worked well together, but that was probably enough for today. The girls then approach Masaru, and he uses transference. They are transported to the outskirts of the city of Shiori. Masaru tells the girls that they should go to the guild and report the successful completion of the task. At this moment, Elizabeth's eyes twitched. Arriving at Masaru's house, she said that this was beyond her comprehension. Only a few people in the world can use transfer magic, and the young man learned it as if nothing had happened and how it happened at all. Masaru said that it was his cheat, but transfer requires more mana the more weight objects have in space. However, for some reason, this restriction does not apply to him. Masaru said that it would be better to install the gate at home rather than outside the city. If they did that, the number of entrances and exits of the city would not match the entries in his guild card. It would be better to hide the fact that he can use transfer magic. Of course, it is useful for travel and trade, but this magic can also be dangerous, as it allows spies and warriors from other countries to enter the city. That's why the authorities are keeping a very close eye on who might use it. Masaru says the girl is right. If something like that happened, it would make life harder and it could prevent cheat testing. Elizabeth says that they have a servant of truth, so if they don't abuse the transference, they can hide it quite successfully. Masaru agrees with her. Then he says that he almost forgot. He has something to do with the guild. Elizabeth asks because they already reported the quest completed. Masaru doesn't answer and says that he will be back for dinner. The next day, the girls were walking behind the boy. Angela asked Masaru why he was so happy. The boy answered that he had no idea what the girl was talking about. Elizabeth answered that this was a forest and whether the boy was sure that they were going the right way. Suddenly, Angelica smells something and asks what the smell is. Then they all saw some kind of building. Angela asked if it was really a hot spring. Masaru agreed and said that it was a secret place that some adventurers had found. He had gone to the guild yesterday to find out about it. He also gives out some clothing inventory and tells the girls that he wants them to wear these. Masaru says that these are swimsuits. You can't wear clothes to the hot spring, but many people are embarrassed to be naked in front of others, so swimsuits were invented for those people. He and Sati made them day and night. They tried very hard. He would like them all to put them on and bathe with him in the spring. The young man bows. Elizabeth says that even if Masaru's request is forgotten, Sati's work must not be in vain. Masaru is happy. In other words, today is swimsuit day. His gray, lonely student days will finally come to an end. The young man is looking forward to it all. Then, as it turned out, the girls were taking a hot spring in their bathing suits. They were having fun, and Masaru was listening to all of this. He rubbed his eyes, saying that today the sweat was stinging his eyes more than usual. The boy began to cry, and Elizabeth shouted at him to stop. She wondered if Masaru didn't know that the men's and women's baths were separate. Angela said it was a secret spring, but surprisingly well kept. Talika said the Merchants Guild had once tried to run it and charged an entrance fee, but they had financial difficulties and abandoned it. Angela said that such a desperate Masaru is very cute. Elizabeth replied that you can't spoil him, otherwise he will completely get carried away. Just recently he tried to force her to agree to some bad things. Angela said that Masaru tried the same with Elizabeth. Elizabeth said that he was from far away, and the mentality there is probably different. Sati said that maybe the girls would tell her, because she would try. The girls shouted that she looked so correct, but she agreed to this. Sati climbed the ladder of adulthood in one fell swoop. Masaru blushed and thought that listening to his girls talk about their nightly adventures was very embarrassing. Suddenly the young man felt a tremor in the water. He jumped up and shouted to Sati. The girl warned the others that everyone needed to get out right away. Masaru's presence detection skill worked. He thought that whatever was approaching here was huge, but it was slow, which meant he would be able to catch up with the weapon. Suddenly, tentacles broke through the walls of the hot springs and grabbed the girls. The monster's head appeared and it was simply huge. Elizabeth was very surprised and said that it was a kraken. Masaru was very surprised and, gritting his teeth, said that it was impossible. Why would a squid from the ocean appear in a lake with fresh water? But he doesn't understand who cares. He was distracted by his body, so the tentacles caught him off guard, but what if he just cuts them off? Angela said that she hasn't mastered it yet, but she will try using a cheat-enhanced water magic spell. The girl uses an ice bullet spell, but suddenly her body flips over. The girl's skill missed the monster. Angela said that if she was thrown around like that, she wouldn't be able to aim. Elizabeth noticed Angela's curves and it started to irritate her. Sati shouted to Masaru for her bow and arrows. The young man ran towards them and then threw the weapon to the girl. Sati grabbed her hands and fired several arrows at the monster. One of the arrows hit him in the eye, and the monster relaxed its grip, releasing the girls from its tentacles. Masaru immediately used the levitation skill. Elizabeth praised the young man and told him to hold them. She began casting a spell to make the heavens open and thunder roar. The girl used the thunder skill. However, she was very surprised that it didn't work. The monster should have been electrocuted. After all, it was a water monster. Masaru replied that his skin was electrolyzed. There should be something that would work on him. Suddenly, the boy had an idea. I remember one of the skills in that game was something. He suddenly used flight and said that he needed a very strong electric shock. Since they can't cut him, they have to try to stick the sword into him. The young man lands on the kraken with great speed and sticks the sword into his head. At this time, Elizabeth cast a spell. She called upon the Sword of Light, the master of the billowing black clouds with words and spirit. At this time, Talika dodged the kraken's tentacles, and Masaru used levitation on all the girls to lift them out of the water. Finally, Elizabeth finished her spell and called for it to burst forth as thunder and pierce the heavens. The girl created a mega thunderstorm and the entire space was struck by lightning. The boy's sword crumbled from such a strong magic. Masaru said that the lightning rod absorbs the energy of lightning and transfers it to the ground, so he used his black steel sword in this way. He served as a conductor of the charge into the kraken's body. Sati was happy and said that they had succeeded, so she asked him to show her victory cry. The young man swung. At that moment, Elizabeth and Angela looked at the young man with a misty gaze. Angela completely closed Tillich's eyes. The boy opened up and shouted that it was their victory. At that moment, the towel on his hips fell off and Elizabeth told him to cover himself. After a while, everyone came to Masaru's house. The young man said that the kraken they defeated seemed to be some new species, so it was sold at a very good price to the guild. Sati said that the source was closed because people were afraid that there might be other unknown monsters there. Too bad. Then Elizabeth interrupted them and said that dinner was ready. Angela had a rather uninspired look. After a while, Elizabeth brings everyone food that is fried until crispy. Masaru thought and then said to Elizabeth, asking what kind of food this is, darker than the darkest night. Elizabeth innocently said it was paste. The boy shouted that the girl was lying. Elizabeth said that the paste with kraken ink was also black. The boy replied that the girl should not equate coal with normal food. Angelique apologized and said that she was distracted for a moment. She did not think that Elizabeth would burn everything down in the blink of an eye. The girl replied that, maybe the view is not very good, but there is a chance for a miracle. Masaru replied that it was wrong to ask the god for lucky food. At that time, Sati said that Elizabeth had worked very hard to prepare it. The young man shouted at Sati not to eat it, just to be polite, because it was just coal. Masaru said that few people succeed the first time, so he would cook dinner today. Sati replied that she would help the young man. After a while, the food was ready. Angela said that she thought those expressions from his country were very cute. Masaru replied that now he thought so too. About the plan for tomorrow, he unfolds the map and says that maybe they should go a little further than the hot spring. He thought that maybe they should visit the city of Nara. At that moment, Talika was very scared. Masaru asked if it was possible that Talika wanted to tell them something, like that they shouldn't go there. The girl answered that it was the opposite. She knew that she would have to go there someday. The girl remembered a very unpleasant man. The next day, the heroes arrive in the city of Nara. Angela said in delight that it was a big city. Elizabeth added that it was probably like Shiori, or even bigger. Masaru suggested that the girls should find something to eat, as they had been training all morning. Sati replied that she was very hungry. Talika was not feeling very well. Masaru's group walked around the city. People were sick and laying on the streets. Parents were crying, holding their children. Masaru said that the whole town seemed to be suffering. They were interrupted by Elizabeth, who said that there was a tavern. She suggested that the group go inside. Entering the tavern, Masaru looks at the menu and frowns, then thinks that this is like heaven and earth, compared to the tavern Dragon's Breath in Shiori where he lived next. Elizabeth whispered that it was only for a small one, just to feed the bird. She didn't understand what was going on here. Then a waitress girl approaches them and asks the customers if they have decided what they will order. Masaru was about to name the order, but suddenly the clanking of equipment was heard, and then knights entered the tavern. The man said that they had come to collect the tax, so the tavern owners had to show the money. The waitress called the father. The man panicked and said that they had already paid for this month, so why had they come? The man replied that taxes had increased because of dishonest citizens who had not paid what they were supposed to. The girl shouted that this was impossible because taxes were already huge, so where else could they be paid? Suddenly, the man hit her in the face with his fist. The girl fell. Masaru suddenly jumped up, but his hand was stopped by Tillich. The girl covered her face with a hood. The girl's father brought the guards a bag of money. He said that these were his last savings. He asked the guards not to touch his daughter. One man counted the coins and shook his head. The other man said that it was not enough. He said that any goods and food they had left should be put out in front of this house tomorrow for payment. The man began to ask about their lives. The guard replied that they were nothing more than a source of food for their master Deltro. If they had nothing else to give, they could become payment themselves. Angelina, Elizabeth, and Sati were very surprised. The men, grinning, left the establishment. Masaru didn't understand why they did that. Then the boy went to the waitress and used healing magic on her. Elizabeth apologized to the man for his uninvited intrusion, then said that the residents seemed exhausted. She said that if there was a problem with the authorities, they could report it to the servants of truth of this city. The man clenched his fist and said that they were fine. He turned to the respected travelers and said that they were fine. He asked the boys to leave them alone, confused. The waitress looked sadly at her father and then turned her attention to the portrait on the wall where her father stood with his wife, and in the middle was herself. After a while, the girl was carrying a bucket of water. She was thinking that she was very hungry. Suddenly, her legs gave way and she began to fall. The girl was caught by Tillich, who covered her magical eye with her hood. The girl apologized, but Tillich interrupted her and said that she had a question for her. She opened her eye and asked the girl if she thought the city authorities were doing the right thing. The girl was surprised, and then, clenching her teeth, said that she couldn't say anything. If she blurted out too much, it would only get worse. So everyone had to keep quiet. Friends, aunt, shopkeepers, even her father. She gritted her teeth and said that something bad had happened to her mother. She was taken to Deltra's mansion with other girls to work, and a few days later she was found dead, beaten, and with her face ruined beyond recognition. Some say she couldn't satisfy the Lord, while others say he just didn't like her. She doesn't understand much about these rumors, but one thing is clear to her. They trampled on her mother's dignity. The girl began to cry. Despite this, the father could not say anything to the servants of truth. Because rumor has it that they are somehow connected to Lord Deltro. If you can't pay your taxes, she and her father will just be used, squeezed dry, and thrown away. But beyond this fear, her heart was breaking because they all had to remain silent. Tillich was very surprised. Then she stood up and started to leave, saying that she had heard enough. After some time, Tillich came to Masaru. The young man wanted to ask her about this city, but the girl said that the lord of the city, Duke Deltro Wheeler, keeps him in an iron fist. She decides to tell a little about the past. The Temple of Truth was founded in the Gali Empire, south of the Lysura Kingdom. They opposed many rulers and did not care about nobility at all. However, the aristocrats could not stand such harsh justice and destroyed the Temple of Truth. After that, King Gali revived the magic of the Eyes of Truth, which exposed lies. Since such art could not be lost, the Temple of Truth was rebuilt. However, to prevent a repetition of the past situation, the aristocrats were given protection. The servants of truth ignored their minor offenses. They also agreed to abide by new rules that stated that no political investigations could be conducted without proper evidence and testimony. Masaru immediately remembered Elizabeth's story. Tillich continued and said that the ruler of this city, Lord Deltro Wheeler, is the grandson of a very powerful man. He uses his grandfather's name to do whatever he wants. The servants of truth refuse to intervene, blaming it on past events and new laws. The voice of this city will fade into darkness if Deltro continues to bind the people with fear. She believes that a good politician is a good liar. If you demand absolute virtue from people, then only naive patriots with heightened idealism will remain. She doesn't care if they are windbags, don't do what they say, or if they commit some minor offenses as long as it is done for the good of the people. But having seen this city, Tillich is convinced that Deltra's behavior is unforgivable. It may sound selfish, but she would like to ask them for something. Masaru, Angela, Elizabeth, and Sati are happy and agree. After some time, the guards stopped two girls. Tillich said that they brought additional taxes. The guards asked the girls their name, occupation, and address. Tilika said she was Ellis the farmer, the girl next to her was Abigail the weaver, and they were from the 2nd Western District. The man told them to stay there. Tilika replied that Mr. Deltro wanted to see them as soon as possible. The men thought that they were women, so they couldn't do anything to them at all. The man told them to go through. Tilika asked where the Duke's chambers were. The man replied that the chambers were right on the stairs, on the 3rd floor of the building. At this time, Elizabeth used magic, and Sati flew straight to the tower. The girl apologized and neutralized the guard. The guards heard some knocking and asked what was going on. At that moment, the girls knocked him out. Tilika said that as they had found out earlier, their security was weak, since no one even tried to oppose them. Sati had noticed all this earlier with the help of the Hawk's Eye. Then Tilika said that Sati and the others would deal with all this and she and Masaru would go on. Masaru then asked Tilika if he had to dress up as a girl. Tilika replied that he had to take them by surprise. Masaru asks why Sati didn't come, since she is also a good swordsman. Tilika replied that they had helped the town with money by buying a wig and makeup. Masaru said that they could have bought something else. Tilika shouted that she thought the boy would suit this image. He has a childish face and feminine features. The guards did not even suspect him of being a man. Masaru replied that he did not even know what to say. Then Elizabeth and Sati had already caught up with the other guards. Tilika shouted to Masaru that they had to hurry, because this was a time battle. A few years ago, Tilika was sitting on a bed in the temple, examining her magic eye. The men were saying that the magic eye implantation had been completed. There was a high chance of side effects, so she would need to be brought in for an examination. Clemens thanked the man and then walked up to Tilika and told the girl that today she had become an instrument of the Temple of Truth. She can consider her parents who sold her to the temple dead. From now on, the eye that she received, which recognizes lies, her words, and her life, she is all the property of the Temple of Truth. There is no room for individuality in this organization. The man asks the girl if she understands. Tilik, with sadness in her eyes, replies that she understands. The man told her that being a tool meant going down a narrow path. Once she accepted that, there was no easier way. She didn't even have to think, she just had to follow the beaten path. However, after she has completed her training, there will come a time when she can go her own way. She will have to decide whether to continue down that descent, remaining a mere instrument in the power of the title of Servant of Truth, or she would use the title to achieve something on her own. Tilik was surprised at that moment, remembering the words that she should choose carefully what she wanted to become. After some time, Tilika and Masaru reached the door to Duke Deltro's chambers. They open the door, which begins to creak. The man said that he can't believe that there are ignoramuses in this city who can enter without knocking. Then the man smirks and tells Masaru that he is very handsome. If he can satisfy him, he will forget about his misdeed. At this moment, the man saw Masaru as a girl. Then Tilika removes her hood, and the man recognizes this left eye, and then realizes that the girl is a servant of truth. Tilika said that she had seen what was happening in this city. It was the duty of nobles to rule over the people so that they could have a decent life, but a man's duty to the city of Mira was completely unfulfilled. The man stands up and spreads his arms, then asks the girl if anyone in the city has complained. No one said a word about being dissatisfied. He turns to the respected servant of truth and says that he believes the girl already knows that they cannot conduct a political investigation without evidence and testimony. He demands her to state her name and rank. He shouts that the girl will lose her head. He will make sure that her head is cut off. The girl says that her name is Tilika and she is a servant of truth of the 3rd rank. The man is right that they, the servants of truth, are obliged to observe the rules. That is why there will be no problems as long as there are witnesses. Suddenly, there was a lot of footsteps. Angela entered the room with a crowd of locals. The man started shouting about what they were doing. Who said they could break into his mansion? The man asked for Angela and said that according to the girl, Deltro wanted to see them. Angela apologized and said that otherwise they would not have come here. Elizabeth, who also approached the Duke's room, said that the guards here were too weak. It would not be difficult to disarm them unnoticed so that they would not prevent the townspeople from entering. She says there's still time before the guards in the distance notice something is wrong and rush in. At this point, the guards notice that they haven't received the usual report from the mansion. They head off to check out what's going on. Tilika says that as a servant of truth, she asks the people of Mira if it is right that Duke Deltro Wheeler rules this city. All the people were afraid. The man shouted at them not to open their mouths. If they behaved decently, he would forget that they had broken into the mansion and allow them to return to their normal lives. There is no point in saying yes or no. This servant of truth has broken the rules by trying to investigate, so they are not obligated to answer. Talika looked sadly and said that the Temple of Truth had lost sight of what was happening in this city. Another servant of truth who would wish to help them would never come again. She is probably their last chance to save their lives. The man said it was useless. The townspeople swore allegiance to him. No matter how much the girl asks, there will be no answer. He begins to threaten the servant of truth, saying that he will send her and her friends to execution. Masaru was surprised that everyone just stood there and remained silent, even after they had come this far. The Duke's laughter echoed throughout the room. Suddenly, a voice was heard saying that her mother had been killed by Duke Deltro. The man immediately fell silent. Talika used her eye of truth and looked away. Suddenly, everyone started turning around and looking at the angry girl who said those words with hatred. Masaru was very happy. Talika, who used the eye of truth, realized that it was true. The Duke laughed and said that this was childish babble, so they should not listen to her. Suddenly, a voice was heard saying that Deltro had forced his wife to please him. The man got angry and asked who had just said that. Others began to talk about how they were told that the taxes had gone up because they hadn't paid enough to the capital, but they also heard that it was all going into Deltro's pockets. Others heard that he was forcing the men of the city to fight monsters in his basement. That was probably what had happened to some of the husbands. The taxes are so high that the city is overflowing with starving and homeless people. They are screaming that they can't live like this any longer. Some have demanded that their sons be returned. The man then said that his daughter had been hit by Deltro's soldier when she protested that they couldn't pay more taxes, but she was right. The man turned out to be the tavern owner. Talika said that it was true that a child's words were not enough to silence one or two complainers, but when so many dissatisfied voices were raised together, even the Temple of Truth could no longer ignore it. The man ordered everyone to be quiet. He says that these townspeople are talking nonsense. It's all nonsense and baseless rumors, only he himself is right here. There was a tense silence. Suddenly, Talika used her eye of truth and said that the Duke was guilty. It seemed he was well aware of his misdeeds. Based on the testimony of the townspeople and his false statements, he will be judged by the Temple of Truth. Suddenly, the Duke called the commander of the guard, Fedion. He ordered him to kill everyone, and he could feed the corpses to the monsters, because there are no irreplaceable residents in this city. Suddenly, Elizabeth shouted that reinforcements had arrived. Sati and Elizabeth joined the fight. Talika realized that the situation was getting out of control. Masaru came out against the guard commander. The man asked if the young man really wanted to stop him, and if so, he would start with him. The man said he would cut him in two. Then suddenly, the young man uses an air hammer and knocks the man out. The Duke was surprised and his mouth was open. The guards were also very surprised. The guard commander lost consciousness. The Duke lost control of the situation and then grabbed a knife from the table and began to attack the young man. Masaru knocked the blade out of his hands and then, having disabled it, pinned his head to the floor. He said that the Duke had made the people he was supposed to protect suffer because of his greed. Then he tried to take their lives. The boy asked if the man really thought he would get away with it. He told him that this was the end of him. At that moment, Angelique told the guards that there was no point in continuing to fight. They lowered their swords. All the residents were happy that everything turned out this way. Talika also smiled, looking at this whole situation. A few days later, the Duke was handed over to the servants of the Temple of Truth. The man said that he could not understand why they had to travel so far, and that it seemed that the man's luck had deserted him. Then the servant of the Temple of Truth turned and looked Talika in the eyes. He turned and followed the Duke. Masaru asked if it was really a high-ranking truth seeker. He felt like he wanted to yell at them. Talika said that in fact, even though they had solved the crime, she had almost broken the rules. Now she probably earned the disapproval of the Temple of Truth. They tried to avoid conflicts with the aristocracy whenever possible. She did it based on her idea of justice. However, she put all the boys in danger. Angela replied that, as a servant of the gods, she could not have dreamed of a better opportunity to help those in trouble than this. Sati added that she is Talik's older sister, so it is natural that she helped her younger sister. Elizabeth said that protecting people was the greatest duty of aristocrats. Deltro had brought shame on the aristocracy with his actions, so she was very pleased to help Talika. Masaru said that the girl did not put them through anything, because they chose to help her. Besides, he thinks that the girl did the right thing. Elizabeth interrupted them and asked if they had seen her talking to the man. The girl said that it was the new lord. He already had experience in managing his land. He plans to develop the city of Nara along with it, so that the economy of both territories will grow. And also, since the previous servant of truth of this city is under investigation, a new one has been appointed in his place. She hopes that all this will help make the city better. Talika agrees and smiles. After some time, they return to the city center and see a huge crowd of residents there. The waitress girl thanked Talika and everyone else. Talika said that she should thank the girl because her courage saved them, which managed to touch the hearts of adults. Talika said that they had no reason to regret. They must not always rely on the Temple of Truth. There are times when justice cannot come to their rescue. This means that they themselves must seek justice. She clenched her fist and said that justice would not always answer their call. The man interrupted her and said that everything was fine because the girl had come to them after all. Talika was surprised and remembered how her mentor had said that the Temple of Truth had begun to rot. More and more servants were conspiring with the aristocrats and forgetting their duty. They use laws as an excuse to turn their backs on the people whose future they are supposed to protect. They, the servants of truth, are not at all the messengers of justice. Talika told the mentor that he did not approve of collusion with aristocrats at all, and no matter how difficult it was, he always tried to do the right thing. When she received this magical eye, the man asked her whether she would remain an instrument in the power of the title of a church servant, or would use it herself. She said she wanted to be a good servant of truth who uses her title for the benefit of people, just like a mentor. The man was surprised by Talika's words, and then, smiling, said that the girl was very brave. Talika remembered these words. The girl was embarrassed, and then ran away screaming for everyone to live healthy lives. Masaru was surprised that she suddenly said such a thing. The residents smiled and thanked the young servant of truth once again. They also wished the group good health. They were very sorry that they had nothing to thank them with. They wished them to take care of the seed on their journey. Masaru says that he thinks Nira City will be fine. They were able to rise up against the man who intimidated them, and it was all thanks to Talika's help. He stroked the girl's head and she cried at that moment. Then he came to his senses and apologized to her, saying that he was being too familiar with her, even though they were almost the same age. The girl said that she didn't mind at all. She recalled his words and said that when the boy got angry at Deltro, he looked very cool. The other girls smiled. The young man then opened the information window and asked Talika if there was any magic she wanted to learn. Talika was already level 18. At this moment, strange creatures similar to harpies were carrying the prey to their lair. They were carrying it to another monster that was hatching eggs. She tore the deer carcass apart and, after chewing it, smiled. Fate had prepared a new enemy for Masaru and his friends. After some time, the heroes were preparing for dinner. Elizabeth came out with food and said that dinner was ready. Masaru was even a little scared. The girl said that today they had Elizabeth's special seafood pasta. Masaru said that it was incredible because it looked edible. Elizabeth said that she couldn't believe that the boy expected so little from her. Not only does it look good, but they will also like the taste. Masaru wished everyone bon appetit. At the end of dinner, Talika said that Masaru and Sati had finally taken over the cooking. Elizabeth was very curious about what had gone wrong. Angela told Eli to stop adding anything to the food behind her back. Then the girl called Masaru and asked what they would do tomorrow. The young man unfolded the map and began to examine it. He pointed to a place on the map and said that they would be completing their training program. The next day, Masaru's group fought goblins. While Masaru was dealing with the monster with his sword, Angela used an ice arrow and pierced the monster. Masaru looked back and thanked Angela for her help. After a while, the boys couldn't believe their eyes. Angela said that she had no combat experience before, and now she can fight orcs and goblins after only half a month of training. Elizabeth replied that she understood what the girl was talking about. Her magic power, duration, and preparation speed are growing incredibly fast. This is thanks to Masaru's cheat. The young man said that perhaps it is worth thanking the god Ito. Suddenly, Sati heard something. At that moment, Masaru was talking about how they had gained a lot of skill points, so they needed to discuss what skills to invest them in. He was stopped by Sati, who used a skill and pointed upwards. The boys looked up and saw monsters hovering there. Masaru was scared. Elizabeth said that they were harpies. The young man was very scared. Suddenly, Talika ordered her other half to come to her. She called Panya. Suddenly, some mouse appeared. Thanks to the cheat, she has summoning magic, allowing her to combine the sight and hearing of her familiar with hers. Mouse Panya will show her everything that happens in the distance. The mouse ran after the harpies and was very surprised. Talika was also very surprised. The mouse saw a huge harpy's lair. Talika said there was a huge nest of harpies up ahead. There were about 10 or 20 guarding it. Elizabeth said there were probably more inside. That was quite a lot. She said they would destroy them. Masaru was not feeling well. Angelica called Masaru, but Elizabeth interrupted her and said that she knew everything. She heard about what happened at the ranch. However, they, adventurers, sometimes have urgent tasks that they are obliged to carry out. Like when they were sent to defend the fortress of Gorbas. They did not meet the harpies in battle then because they are daytime monsters and sleep at night. However, they will encounter them in the future. Of course, the young man can choose not to participate in them, but then the young man will pay a large fine and may lose the trust of the guild. This is a very unfavorable outcome. That is why they must destroy this nest, and then the young man will be able to overcome this fear once and for all. Masaru clenched his fist and then agreed and said that they would destroy the lair. At this time, the harpies were being watched by the mouse Tiliki. Angelina stood with Elizabeth. Elizabeth said that she was so cruel, but it was the only way she could help him overcome this trauma. Sometimes she didn't like this side of him. Masaru probably likes kind girls like Angela more. Angela started laughing. Elizabeth shouted that there was nothing to laugh about. Angela told Elizabeth that she tries not to show it, but she cares about what others think of her. She thinks that being kind does not mean saying nice things to others. And then it's worth being strict with the one you care about. Elizabeth is kind and Masaru knows it too, and that's why Masaru is trying to confront the past now. She is still a newbie as an adventurer, just like Sati and Tilika, so Masaru can only consult her about many things. Each of them has different abilities and can help each other. She thinks that as long as the 5 of them are together, they will be able to overcome any difficulties that come their way. Elizabeth smiled, and Sati, having overheard their conversation, began to wipe away her tears. Angela said that she still felt sorry that Masaru was not hers alone. Elizabeth agreed with the girl. They were interrupted by Masaru, who said that according to Tilika, there were about 40 harpies there, and one of them was noticeably larger than the others, and she was also guarding the eggs in the center of the nest. Elizabeth said it must be the Harpy Queen. She must be destroyed at all costs, because she could spawn a new flock of harpies elsewhere if she escaped. She is also their main target. Elizabeth said that he will use long-range magic to destroy the nest. Masaru should remain in the rear as a trump card. With the newly learned high-ranking spell, Miraculous Light, he would be able to supply them all with mana, so he should stand behind and transfer the mana while they attack with combat magic. Then they will deal with any harpy that survives the first attack. Their current forces are more than enough to deal with them, but they still need to be careful not to make mistakes. The plan will be called Hit Them Hard, Then Let's Move On. Masaru shouted that he was worried about this name. Elizabeth was flexing her fists and said that she would finally try out her new spell. At that moment, Talika said that she would call off Panya for now. Sati added that it was very convenient. Masamune, looking at the girls, thought that their lives were now in his care. He had no time to be nervous. He had to protect them. He had to pull himself together. The girl starts to get nervous, but suddenly Angela takes his hand. The girl tells him that everything is fine and they will protect him. Masaru realized that just as he wanted to protect them, they wanted to protect him too. He exhaled and thanked the girls, then told them that they would do everything together. Having reached the lair, Elizabeth began to cast a spell that, according to the agreement of the ancestors, she brings a piece of her spirit so that it becomes the basis of her power. The girl commanded to be as fast as an arrow and as strong as a hammer blow and heed her words. The Queen of the Harpies noticed something was wrong. Elizabeth called upon the lightning of the god to strike her enemies. Suddenly, a huge bolt of lightning struck right into the Harpies' lair. It was a terrastorm. The Harpies' lair was destroyed. Then Talika called Hawk, who was an eagle. He began to fly over the Harpies' lair and suddenly a crunching sound was heard. The Harpy Queen emerged from the rubble of her lair. She staggered across the lair where the bodies of her kin lay. Talika said the queen was still alive. It looked like the other harpies were blocking her. Elizabeth said it was a curse. Suddenly, the queen harpy heard a cracking sound from the eggs she was hatching. However, these eggs were destroyed and broken. The harpy began to scream and saw her relatives who had survived. The harpies began to attack Masaru and the girl. The boy says that they have been discovered. Elizabeth says that it is exactly according to plan. She tells everyone to keep them in sight so that they do not attack from blind spots. Sati used her bow and shot an arrow straight at the harpy, which pierced the harpy's chest. Angela used Ice Storm at that moment, hitting the harpies with a wave of ice that froze their wings. Talika summoned Taiga, who was a huge tiger. Masaru thought that thanks to the presence detection skill, he could accurately determine where the harpies were. The youth uses a fire arrow and pierces one of the monsters. He thinks that it won't be like the ranch here and he can do everything. Suddenly, Sati shouts at Masaru to turn around. At that moment, Masaru was attacked from behind by a harpy. Elizabeth charged her blades to save Masaru, Talika sent Taika towards him, and Sati aimed her bow and arrow towards the boy. At that moment, Masaru remembered what happened before. Suddenly, Masaru turned around and stabbed the harpy queen with his sword. He said he would no longer live in the past. He was fine now. The young man, looking at the harpies, says that skills can be learned without cheating. Monsters are also capable of this. Probably, the queen had a stealth skill that counteracted his presence detection. However, thanks to Sati's acoustic detection and his higher skill level, he was able to react in time. Angela asked the boy if he was still afraid of the harpies. The boy replied that he now knew that he could fight them with the proper training. Besides, he is not alone now. The girls began to hug the young man. At that time, a rich carriage was driving along the road. The man who smelled the flower turned to the coachman named Keynes and asked him what color he thought she would like as a gift. The man replied that he believed the girl would be happy with any gift from Mr. George. The man smiled and said that he was looking forward to meeting dear Talika. The wait was over and it was time for Masaru to propose. After some time, Masaru and Talika arrived at the room in the Adventurers Guild. The man said that a notice had arrived from the Temple of Truth. He already knows about what happened in the city of Nira. They have uncovered the crimes of Duke Deltro. However, the local servant of truth must solve such problems. If he had committed a crime, it was up to the senior servant of truth to deal with it, not Talika. Besides, even though she had managed to obtain evidence, witness testimony was not enough. She has not fulfilled all the conditions for a political charge. He asks if the girl understands that she has repeatedly violated the code of the servant of truth. Masaru added that it should be said that thanks to Talika the city was saved. The girl put out her hand and stopped the boy. She replied that she understood and was ready to bear any punishment. The man replied that in that case he would read her the order. Truth servant of the third rank, Talika is suspended from work for 3 days. Everyone froze. Talika asked if she was really being suspended for 3 days. The man asked if that was not enough for her. The man then turned to Masaru and asked how much he was involved with Nera's case. Masaru replied that he was involved enough to know that Delto and Nera's servant of truth were in cahoots. The man then asked Masaru to keep what he said a secret. Revealing political crimes is one of the main duties of a servant of truth. This means that sometimes rules must be abandoned in order to provide for unrighteous deeds. Therefore, they decided to show leniency towards the violations committed by the servant of truth Talika. They did this to save face. In fact, they are trying to hide the fact that some servants of truth are colluding with the nobles, including those at the top. So they are just talking nonsense to hush this matter up as quickly as possible. A high-ranking minister of truth, who was temporarily in charge of Nehru, recently stopped at Shiori on his way to the capital. He told the man that he did not seem to be doing his best as a mentor to the third-rank truth worker, Talika. The man replied that after what she had done, he was sure that he had taught her correctly. He smiled and told Masaru and Talika that they should have seen the sour expression on that high-ranking servant of truth when he told him that. It was quite a sight. The boys smiled. In any case, the girl is suspended for 3 days, starting today. She is forbidden to work and use the magic eye. The girl said that she understood. The man then gets down to business and tells Masaru that the month he was given has already passed. George Byron, who has been recommended as Talika's husband, will arrive in town tomorrow morning. If Masaru wants to take Talika's place as husband from him, he will have to prove to the man that he is a better magician than George. The young man agrees. Talika says that, to be honest, she doesn't like the test chosen for this. George will have an advantage. The man replies that it is dangerous to fight one-on-one, as both of them possess advanced magic and are capable of instantly killing their opponent, and if he asks to demonstrate their spells to him, it will become more difficult to choose a winner. The test he chose would clearly determine the winner, while also ensuring their safety. Masaru told Talika not to worry. It might be dangerous, but he had trained for this day with the cheat. He tells the girl that he will definitely win. She agrees. The next day, everyone gathers. George says that after coming all the way here, he really must duel this commoner. He asks you to explain to him why. The man turned to Clemens and said that he didn't mind them discussing Talika's marriage here, but if things got tense, they should go outside. The man said that one of the duties of a servant of truth is to leave an heir for the magical eye. Therefore, when choosing a spouse, they evaluate mastery of magic, not pedigree. George says he was told the man didn't like dealing with aristocrats, but now he understands very well that the man is a stubborn man. He asks for forgiveness and says that it cannot be that the servants of truth would conspire with the nobles. He points to Masaru and says that this is going to be a spectacle. This is the chance for the magnificent George to show his power to the people. He throws a glove at Masaru and says that in order to make this duel official, a challenge must be made. The young man dodges the glove. George said he should have raised his glove to show he was accepting the challenge, but he ducked it as if it was dirty. Masaru apologized and said the man threw it suddenly. Clemens then calls them to go to the Shiori Adventurers Guild training grounds. Masaru doesn't understand why there are so many spectators. Suddenly, a man appeared and said that he was there to judge this fight. He asked the participants to get ready. George and Masaru used earth magic to create giant stone golems. The judge said that the winner would be the one who reduced the opponent to a state where he could not be restored. It is also forbidden to attack golems directly, then it is allowed to use magic inside their golem in an attack. George looked at Masaru's golem and wondered what those horns were on his head. Masaru said that the great humanoid must have horns. George wondered if Masaru wanted to make the golem look like an ogre, or if it was just a decoration, but there wasn't much point to it. He thought it looked kind of cool. George also created a horn on his golem's head. Elizabeth noticed that he was imitating Masaru. Finally, the judge announced that the contestants should get ready. The man gave a signal, but no one understood that it was the signal to fight. Then George said that he was starting. Suddenly, his golem immediately rushed towards Masaru. The young man was surprised that his golem was very fast. However, Masaru's golem was able to dodge the attack, but suddenly, George's golem struck him. George said that the commoner's golem was too slow. Angela couldn't understand how. Golems were very big, but then why were they so fast? Elizabeth said that she had heard that George Byron was an excellent earthbender, but right now he was using windbending. He was releasing jets of air from nozzles on his limbs to increase his mobility. Earth and wind. To think that he could master both spells separately. George shouted that speed is justice, speed is power. He commanded the golem to move faster and brighter. Sati then noticed that Masaru's golem was beginning to split. Elizabeth said that it was repairing itself by absorbing earth magic with its feet, but the speed of repair was no faster than the speed of damage. Since Masaru isn't that good at earth magic, he focused on defending and strengthening his arms to counter George's highly mobile golem, but it wouldn't do any good unless he hit his opponent hard. At this time, George shouted to Masaru what he was fighting for. They, the nobles, have a duty to lead the people together with their beloved king. They are proud of this role and their noble blood. The Byron family is growing and prospering, and that gives them more power to protect people. That's why they must find spouses with a decent status and lineage. He asks if Masaru understands the cost, the significance, and the responsibility of having such power. Masaru thinks that political marriages were once common in Japan and elsewhere. In most countries, it was considered the norm. And by this world's standards, that's right too. He thinks that's precisely why he shouldn't judge the locals based on the moral values of the society he used to live in. Suddenly, Talika screamed Masaru's name and he woke up. He thought about how some things remain the same. He screams that he will protect the hearts of people and Talika's heart too. To avoid wasting his time and to prove that he has the strength to do so, he stands here. Masaru's golem begins to attack. George asked the boy to hold back on talking about his dreams, otherwise he would have holes in his defenses. He got distracted and forgot to defend himself. George asks permission to teach him. He can continue to repair the golem by absorbing soil, but the golem still has a humanoid body, meaning if he destroys the torso, the unattached limbs will simply collapse. Golem George pierces Golem Masaru and the boy says that, this, his victory.